Between 1350 and 1600, over 24,000 medieval taverns and alehouses across England served as centres of social life, hosting everything from brawls to illicit affairs to disease transmission. Nights out were wild and often deadly, but for people with brutally short lifespans, the tavern was both an escape and a risk worth taking. Here's what medieval nights out were really like. Hey, quick thing before we start. If you actually listen to these regularly, hit like or subscribe. I always wonder where everyone's at, so comment your city and what time it is. Weird to think some of you are having breakfast in London while I'm recording this at night here in the States. Alright, tonight it's medieval nightlife. But wait, are you comfortable? No, really, check. Pillows, blankets, the whole deal. Where we're going, you'll want to be settled, trust me. Once we've dived into the dark, sticky floors of a medieval tavern, you're gonna appreciate your clean sheets way more. Your eyes crack open to darkness. The hard straw mattress beneath you has left a pattern of tiny indentations across your back and legs. The smell hits you immediately. Stale beer and sweat mixed with something earthy that you can't quite place. You're in the back room of the Boar's Head Tavern, one of the most popular alehouses in your small English town. Get up, you useless lump. We open in an hour. The tavern keeper's wife is standing over you, her face pinched with annoyance. You rented this tiny space for the night when you were too drunk to make it home. Smart move, considering the night watchman would have thrown you in the stocks for public drunkenness after curfew. 5 more minutes, you mumble, then immediately regret it as she dumps a bucket of cold water on your feet. Now! She barks, and you're up, your head pounding like a blacksmith's hammer. So this is what a medieval hangover feels like. Not much different from a modern one, except you don't have Advil or clean water or literally any of the comforts you're enjoying right now in your cozy bed. Imagine the worst hangover of your life, then add the smell of 1,000 unwashed bodies and the knowledge that your medical treatment options include bloodletting and leeches. You stumble to your feet, which is when you realise you've lost one shoe. Perfect. Those cost you 2 weeks' wages. You're a craftsman, a cooper, which means you make barrels for a living. Not a terrible job in 1577 England, especially since your main clients are taverns and alehouses. Fun fact that I spent way too long researching. England at this time had approximately 24,000 alehouses. That's one for every 142 people. For comparison, modern London has about one pub for every 2,000 people. These people drank a lot. As you shuffle out of the back room into the main tavern area, you see the morning preparations beginning. The tavern keeper's daughter, Eliza, is sweeping the packed dirt floor. It doesn't really help with the smell, but at least it clears away the larger chunks of whatever that is. "Morning, Master Cooper," she says with a smirk. "Father says you were singing about the Queen's undergarments last night. Lucky the constable wasn't here." You feel your face flush. Did you really? That's treason talk. People have lost their tongues for less. "I don't remember that," you mutter. "Course you don't," she laughs. "You also tried to challenge Walter the blacksmith to a wrestling match. He picked you up with one hand." Okay. Picture this. Medieval taverns weren't like modern bars with their clean counters and health inspections. The alehouse you're standing in right now is literally someone's house where they brew ale and let people drink it. This particular one is about the size of a modern bedroom. Maybe 40 square feet of space. When it's packed with people at night, you're basically pressed against everyone else, which explains why disease spreads so damn fast. Eliza hands you a wooden tankard filled with small beer, the weak morning ale that everyone drinks because the water will literally kill you. It tastes like liquid bread with a hint of whatever might have been in this unwashed cup before you, but it helps with the headache, so you gulp it down. "Your friend's outside," she says. "The one with the—" She gestures vaguely to her face. "Ah, that would be Richard, your apprentice. Poor kid has a port wine-stained birthmark that covers half his face. People either stare or look away quickly. Medieval folks were superstitious as hell, and anything different marked you out. Richard's lucky, though. A century earlier, and they might have drowned him at birth, thinking he was touched by the devil. Wait, it gets better. By better, I mean worse." You stumble outside into the weak morning light. The narrow street is already busy with people. A woman emptying her chamber pot nearly hits you. She's supposed to yell "Gardyloo" as a warning, but most people don't bother. You dodge just in time. The streets are basically open sewers with a thin layer of straw thrown over them to soak up the everything. "Master, there you are." Richard hurries over. He's carrying your lost shoe. "You left this at the Prancing Pony. The barmaid says you owe her 6pence for the broken chair." You groan. "Another chair? That's the third this month. Not like your bed at home where you can just, lie down without breaking anything." "Did I do anything else stupid?" you ask, dreading the answer. Richard looks uncomfortable. "Well, you might have told everyone you once made a barrel for the king, and that it was the finest barrel in all of Christendom." You close your eyes. And William the tax collector was there, said he'd be by your shop today to reassess your property value, seeing as you're doing such fine royal work now. This is your life in medieval England, one drunken boast, and suddenly your taxes go up, and you can't just move to another town. Travel is dangerous, expensive, and most places require you to have a sponsor or join a guild before you can work there. Speaking of dangerous, you need to get to your workshop before the tax collector arrives. Maybe you can bribe him with a small cask of that French wine you've been hiding. Medieval corruption is so common, it's basically just how business works. As you and Richard start walking, you pass the town pillory. There's a man locked in it, his head and hands stuck through the holes in the wooden board. His crime is written on a paper above him: drunkenness and lewdness. You can bet he's facing a lot worse than just a hangover this morning. "That's John the miller's son," Richard whispers. "Got caught with the baker's wife, in the baker's bed." "While the baker was where?" you ask. "At the tavern," Richard replies. You both laugh, though not too loudly. The man in the stocks looks miserable as people throw rotted vegetables at him. This is entertainment in medieval times. Public humiliation is basically Netflix. "Throw a good one for me, Margaret," a passing woman calls to another who's taking aim with what appears to be a very soft turnip. "Oh, I will, Bess. He tried the same with my daughter last Easter." The women cackle as the turnip makes a satisfying splat against John's forehead. Your head is still pounding as you continue down the street toward your workshop. The town is coming fully awake now. Shopkeepers are setting up their stalls, apprentices are running errands, and the church bell is ringing for morning mass. You should go. Everyone should go daily. But like many, you attend mainly on Sundays and holy days. The church controls almost everything in medieval society, but people have always found ways around the rules. "Master, look," Richard nudges you and points to a man stumbling out of another tavern, the Crusty Loaf, a place known for its cheap wine and cheaper company. The man is clearly still drunk from the night before, his fine clothes rumpled and stained. "That's Lord Pembroke's son." You pull Richard away quickly. "Don't stare," you hiss. "That's how you get a beating." Class divisions are serious business. That young nobleman might be a drunken mess, but he could still have you flogged for looking at him wrong. "But he's wearing different clothes than yesterday," Richard insists, "and his purse is missing." "Ah, now that's interesting. Even noblemen aren't safe from tavern thieves and cut purses. The night brings a certain equality and vulnerability." You arrive at your workshop, a small building attached to your even smaller home. Your wife, Agnes, is already up and has a fire going. She takes one look at you and shakes her head. Again, husband? What was it this time? The ale at the Boar's Head or the wine at the Pony? Both, you admit, collapsing onto a bench. And possibly something in a very small cup that tasted like fire. You're lucky, she says, but there's no humour in her voice. Martin the Chandler never came home last night. His wife just came by asking if I'd seen him. A chill runs through you despite the warm morning. People disappear in the night sometimes, robbed, murdered, or simply fallen into the river while drunk. Life is fragile here. Death is everywhere. I'm sure he'll turn up, you say, but you both know it might not be good news when he does. Agnes hands you a piece of brown bread and a small cup of ale. Breakfast of champions. Well, breakfast of everyone, really. Unless you're rich, this is pretty much what you eat every morning. The widow Simmons came by, Agnes says casually, too casually. Says her son wants to apprentice. You groan. The widow Simmons has been trying to get her boy into a trade since her husband died. She's also been trying to get into your bed for just as long. Agnes, I already have Richard. I can barely afford to feed one apprentice. She's offering 10 shillings, Agnes says, raising an eyebrow, and she'll provide his food for the first year. That is actually a very good offer. 10 shillings is about a month's earnings for you. Is this about the money, or is it about keeping the widow away from your husband? Richard pipes up, then immediately looks like he regrets speaking when Agnes glares at him. The boy needs a trade, she says firmly, and we need the money, especially if your master keeps drinking it away. You wince. She's not wrong. Medieval household economics are precarious at best. One bad season, one robbery, one fire, and your family could be begging in the streets. Oh, think about it, you mutter, finishing your bread. Think about it with a clear head, Agnes advises, then adds, There's a letter for you, from London. Now that's unusual. Letters are expensive and rare. Most people go their whole lives without sending or receiving one. You frown, suddenly nervous. The only person you know in London is your brother, who works for a wine merchant. Agnes hands you the folded paper, sealed with a blob of wax. You break it open carefully, and Richard leans in unashamedly to look. Privacy is not really a concept in medieval times. Your home has one room where everyone sleeps, eats, and lives together. Can you read it? Agnes asks. Like most women, and most men for that matter, she never learned to read. You squint at the careful script. Your own literacy is basic at best, learned from the parish priest in exchange for barrels to store the church's communion wine. It's from Geoffrey, you say, meaning your brother. He says, you trace the words slowly. The wine merchant is expanding, needs more barrels, good ones for the fancy wine, wants to know if I can make 30 by Michaelmas. Agnes's eyes widen. 30? That's a lot of money, you finish. Enough to maybe buy a bigger workshop, maybe even take on another apprentice properly, maybe even afford better wine so you don't feel like death warmed over every morning. I told you, Richard says triumphantly. I told you that Noble liked your work. He must have told the London merchants. The hungover fog clears from your mind a bit. A few months ago, you had indeed made several barrels for a passing nobleman. He'd paid well and promised to recommend you, but people promise a lot of things after a few cups of wine. We need to celebrate, Richard exclaims. No, you and Agnes say simultaneously. But this is good fortune. We should give thanks at church, he amends quickly. Agnes nods approvingly. Yes, we should. And then your master needs to stay away from the taverns for a few nights if he's going to make 30 barrels by Michaelmas. Church bells ring again, signaling the advancing morning. You need to get to work, hangover or not. But as you gather your tools, you can't help thinking about tonight, when the taverns will fill again with people seeking a brief escape from their hard lives. The ale will flow, the stories will get taller, the songs bawdier. There will be fights and friendships, deals and deceptions. Someone might die, someone might fall in love, someone might change their fortune with a chance meeting. And tomorrow morning, it will all begin again. The cycle of medieval life, where the tavern stands as a refuge, a danger, and the beating heart of the community. You look up at the watery sun breaking through the clouds. There's work to be done, a tax collector to bribe, and 30 barrels to plan. But tonight, the taverns will call again, as they always do. And somewhere across town, in the back room of the Boar's Head, a young nobleman is just waking up to discover his fine clothes and purse are gone, replaced with someone else's shabby tunic, and a world of trouble waiting for him outside. Medieval nights out, my friends. They were wild, they were dangerous, and for most people, they were the only entertainment they'd ever know. By midday, your hangover has mostly subsided. The pounding in your head has reduced to a dull throb thanks to Agnes's herbal tea, a bitter concoction that tastes like dirt but somehow works. Your workshop smells of fresh-cut oak and wood shavings, a pleasant change from the stale beer stench you woke up in. You've been working on the first barrel for the London order when a shadow darkens your doorway. It's William the tax collector, right on schedule. His thin frame and pinched face remind you of a weasel. "Master Cooper," he says with a smile that doesn't reach his eyes. "I hear business is booming. Royal barrels, is it now?" Richard, who's been sanding wood nearby, suddenly becomes very interested in a knot in the floor. "Just a drunken boast," you admit. "Though I do have a large order from London." William's eyebrows shoot up. "London? Well, that certainly sounds like a man whose taxes might need reassessing. This is how it goes. Success makes you a target. Wealth has to be carefully hidden in medieval society, or someone will take it, either legally through taxes or illegally through theft. "Perhaps we could discuss it over a drink," you suggest, nodding toward the small cask of French wine you've already set aside. Bribery isn't just common, it's expected. William's eyes light up. "A reasonable man, I've always said you were a reasonable man." An hour later, William leaves with a small flask of wine tucked into his coat and a promise to forget about your supposed royal connections. You've lost some good wine, but saved yourself a hefty tax hike. A fair trade in medieval economics. "Is he gone?" Agnes asks, poking her head in from your adjoining home. "Yes, and he won't be back until quarter day," you confirm. She steps fully into the workshop, carrying a basket. "Good. I'm going to the market. Do you need anything?" "Some willow bark, if the herb woman is there," you say, touching your temple, "and maybe see if anyone's heard about Martin the Chandler." Agnes nods grimly. "I'll ask around." After she leaves, you turn to Richard. "Let's finish up here, then head to the prancing pony. I need to pay for that chair, and I want to hear what people are saying about the missing Chandler." Richard grins. He's only 16 and loves any excuse to visit a tavern, even during daylight hours. You work for another hour, completing the base of one barrel and starting on another. It's honest work, requiring skill and precision. The 30-barrel order will keep you busy for weeks, but the payment will be worth it. Maybe you'll even be able to afford a real doctor if anyone falls ill, instead of relying on the local wise woman and her questionable cures. "Master, look," Richard suddenly calls from the doorway where he's been sweeping. "It's him, the nobleman from this morning." You rush over, curiosity overcoming your usual caution. Sure enough, the young man you saw stumbling out of the crusty loaf is walking purposefully down the street. He's still wearing the shabby clothes from this morning, but he's carrying himself differently. Shoulders back, chin up. The walk of someone used to being respected. He's coming this way, Richard whispers. Back to work, you hiss, pushing him toward the barrels. Don't stare. The nobleman pauses outside your workshop, then steps inside without invitation. That's privilege for you. No one would dare stop him. Are you the cooper? He asks, his accent marking him as educated, probably university trained. You bow slightly. I am, my lord. I am not, my lord, he corrects, looking annoyed. I am Master James Harrington, son of Lord Pembroke. You bow again, deeper this time. My apologies, Master Harrington. How may I serve you? He looks around your workshop, taking in the barrels in various stages of completion. I find myself in an unusual situation. I require discreet assistance. Oh boy, this could be good for business or very, very bad for your health. Nobles' problems have a way of becoming everyone else's problems, usually with more dire consequences the further down the social ladder you go. I was robbed last night, he says bluntly. My clothes, my purse, even my signet ring. I woke dressed as this. He gestures to his plain clothing with disgust. That's terrible, sir, you say carefully. Have you informed the constable? James laughs bitterly. And admit I was drunk in a common tavern. My father would disown me. No, I need to resolve this quietly. You glance at Richard, who's pretending to work while clearly eavesdropping. How can a humble cooper help, sir? I need to find who did this before nightfall, James says. The tavern keeper claims to know nothing, but someone there must have seen something. I thought perhaps a local man might have better luck asking questions than a nobleman's son. Translation, he needs someone expendable to do his dirty work. What's in it for me? You ask, then quickly add, Sir. James narrows his eyes, not used to being questioned. 5 shillings now, 5 more when you find my belongings. 10 shillings, the exact amount the widow Simmons offered for her son's apprenticeship. Coincidence? Or is fate giving you a nudge? Deal, you say, holding out your hand before remembering yourself. Nobles don't shake hands with craftsmen. You awkwardly lower it. James doesn't notice your faux pas. He's already pulling out a small pouch from his boot, a clever hiding place even the most thorough thief might miss. Start at the crusty loaf, he instructs, handing you 5 shillings. I was there most of the evening. Then I believe I went to the Boar's Head. My memory grows hazy after that. No kidding. You were at both those taverns last night too, and you don't remember seeing any nobleman. Though, by the end of the night, you probably wouldn't have noticed if the king himself was dancing on the tables. I'll need a description of your belongings, you say. As James describes his fine wool cloak, leather boots with silver buckles and gold signet ring bearing his family crest, you can't help thinking about how much those items are worth, more than you'll earn in a year, more than enough for someone to kill over. I'll do my best, sir, you promise. Where can I find you when I have news? I'm staying at St. Catherine's Monastery until this is resolved, he says. Ask for the guest quarters. Smart move. Monasteries offer comfortable lodging for the wealthy, and no one will question a nobleman's son seeking spiritual guidance for a day or two. After James leaves, Richard explodes with excitement. 10 shillings, that's a fortune, and we get to investigate a robbery. Keep your voice down, you warn. This could be dangerous. Someone bold enough to rob a nobleman might not hesitate to silence witnesses. Richard's face falls slightly, but his eyes still gleam with adventure. So what's the plan? You consider your options. First, we need to finish today's work, then we'll visit the prancing pony, pay for that chair and ask some careful questions. After that, the crusty loaf and the boar's head. What about the chandler? Shouldn't we ask about him too? You nod. We'll keep our ears open. People love to gossip, especially at taverns. Across town, in a large stone house near the cathedral, merchant Edmund Blackwell is also preparing for evening activities. But unlike your modest plans to visit ale houses, Edmund is readying himself for a much more refined establishment. The merchant adjusts his deep blue wool coat, imported from Florence at great expense. His wife, Isabella, fusses with his collar. "The blue makes your eyes stand out," she says approvingly. "Remember to mention the spice shipment to Master Phillips. His wife loves cinnamon." Edmund nods. "And the silk for the mayor's daughter's wedding? Has it arrived?" "This morning. I've already sent word to their household." This is how business works among the merchant class. Formal contracts exist, but most deals are still made face-to-face, often over wine in taverns catering to the wealthier residents. The Gilded Cup is Edmund's destination tonight, an upscale establishment where the wine comes from France and Italy, not the local vineyards, and where the cups are actually gilded around the rims. "Will Lady Anne be there?" Edmund asks casually, too casually. Isabella gives him a sharp look. "I believe she's still in mourning for her husband." "It's been 6 months," Edmund points out. "And she's a wealthy widow now," Isabella adds pointedly. "Don't think I don't know what goes on at these business meetings of yours." Edmund laughs and kisses his wife's cheek. "You know you're the only one for me." She rolls her eyes, but smiles. "Just remember, Lord Phillips controls the northern shipping routes. Be charming, but not too charming to his wife." This is the reality of medieval business, politics, marriages, and alliances all intertwined. A merchant like Edmund lives or dies by his connections and reputation. "I won't be late," he promises, reaching for his walking stick with its silver handle. Another status symbol in a world where appearances matter immensely. "You said that last week," Isabella reminds him. "Then you came home at dawn smelling like wine and perfume that wasn't mine." That was different. We were celebrating the Sussex contract. She clearly doesn't believe him. "Well, try to celebrate with your clothes on this time." The laundress asked about the lipstick on your collar. Medieval marriages, especially among the wealthy, are often practical arrangements. Fidelity is appreciated but not always expected, particularly for men. Still, discretion is essential to maintain social standing. Edmund kisses his wife goodbye and steps out into the afternoon sun. His house is in the better part of town, where the streets are wider and some even have crude cobblestones instead of packed dirt. He nods to his neighbours, another merchant, a physician, and a minor church official. This is his world, separate from the ale houses where craftsmen and labourers drink. The Gilded Cup won't be busy for hours yet, but Edmund likes to arrive early to secure the best table and observe who comes and goes. Information is as valuable as any cargo in his ships. In yet another part of town, preparations of a different sort are taking place. At the Boar's Head, the tavern keeper's wife, the same woman who dumped water on your feet this morning, is directing the evening's preparations. More straw on the floor, she barks at a serving boy. Last night's is soaked through with, well, best not to think about it. The boy hurries to spread fresh straw, the medieval equivalent of a floor cleaning. It does little for the smell, but at least soaks up spilled drinks and worse. The tavern keeper himself, a burly man named Walter, is in the cellar, tapping a new barrel of ale. His daughter Eliza is slicing bread and cheese into portions to sell alongside the drinks. Nothing fancy, just enough to absorb some of the alcohol and keep patrons drinking longer. "Father," Eliza says casually, "did you notice if Martin the Chandler was here last night? His wife's been asking after him." Walter grunts. "Might have been. It was busy. Ask Tom. He was serving most of the night." Tom, a lanky young man who works as a server, looks up from where he's arranging tankards. "The Chandler? Yeah, he was here. Got into an argument with a stranger. Big fellow with a scar on his cheek. Never seen him before." "What were they fighting about?" Eliza asks. Tom shrugs. "Couldn't hear." But they both left together around curfew. Thought it was odd, them settling their differences so quick. Walter and his wife exchange glances. People who disappear after tavern arguments often turn up in ditches or the river. Best not to know too much. "If anyone asks," Walter says firmly, "Martin left alone. We don't need that kind of trouble here. This is the dark side of medieval nightlife. Violence is common, justice is rare, and minding your own business is often the wisest course." The tavern keeper's wife changes the subject. "Did you water down the ale like I told you?" "Just the first few rounds," Walter confirms. "Once they're drunk, they can't tell the difference anyway." "And the wine?" she presses. "Got some cheap stuff to serve if anyone asks to check the cask first. Keep the decent wine hidden for those who don't know better." These are the tricks of the trade. Medieval consumer protection doesn't exist, and taverns can get away with all sorts of deception as long as they don't cross the wrong people. "What about him?" Tom nods toward the back room, "your former sleeping spot." "The Cooper?" Walter's wife scoffs. "He's harmless, drinks too much and sings badly. Probably be back tonight with that apprentice of his mooning over Eliza." Eliza blushes. "Richard doesn't moon over me, mother." "Course he does. Boy's got eyes, doesn't he?" Taverns aren't just places to drink. They're where young people meet, where romances bloom and fade, often in the same night. For many young women like Eliza, marriage to a promising craftsman like Richard could be a step up in the world. "Just don't encourage him too much," Walter warns his daughter. "I don't need a lovesick apprentice causing trouble. Besides, his master owes me money for that bench he broke last week." As the afternoon wears on, the lowest ranks of society are also preparing for evening entertainment, albeit with far fewer options. In the fields outside town, farm labourers are finishing their day's work. "Drink tonight?" one asks another as they stack hay. "Can't afford it," his friend replies, "unless you're buying." "Split a jug at Old Mary's," suggests a third. "Cheaper than the taverns, and she doesn't water it down as much." Old Mary runs what you might call a medieval speakeasy from her cottage on the edge of town. She brews ale in her back room and serves it for halfpenny a cup, less than half what the licensed taverns charge. It's illegal, of course, but the authorities generally look the other way, as long as she pays her informal taxes to the local constable. For the poorest workers, places like Old Mary's are the only affordable option for drinking. No fancy wine, no music, just cheap ale and a bench to sit on. "Heard there's a cockfight behind the tannery," the first labourer says. "Could win some coin there, or lose what little we have," the second points out. "Either way, we drink," says the third with a laugh. Life is hard for these men. Backbreaking labour from dawn to dusk, poor food, poorer housing, a cup of ale and the companionship of friends is often the only pleasure they can afford. Is it any wonder they seize it whenever possible? Back at your workshop, you finish the day's work on the barrels. The sun is starting to lower in the sky and your thoughts turn to your evening plans. "Ready?" you ask Richard, who's been fidgeting impatiently for the past hour. Born ready, he replies with a grin. You roll your eyes at his enthusiasm. Remember, we're looking for information, not trouble. Keep your voice down, your ears open, and don't drink more than 1 cup. Yes, master, he says, attempting to look serious and failing miserably. You lock up the workshop, a simple wooden bar across the door, not that it would stop a determined thief, and head toward the prancing pony to settle your debt for the broken chair. As you walk, you notice how the town is changing as day shifts toward evening. Shops are closing, shutters coming down over windows. The market square is emptying of legitimate vendors and attracting a different sort of crowd, people who prefer to conduct their business in shadows. Church bells ring for evening prayers. Some people hurry toward the church, others deliberately turn away. The medieval relationship with religion is complicated. Fear of damnation balanced against the very human desire for pleasure. Master, Richard says, suddenly grabbing your arm, look there. You follow his gaze to a side street where 2 men are engaged in what appears to be an intense conversation. One is tall with a distinctive scar on his cheek. The other has his back to you, but something about his clothes seems familiar. That's the man Tom mentioned, Richard whispers. The one who left with Martin the Chandler. Your skin prickles with unease. The scarred man certainly looks capable of violence, but the second man, is that a fine cloak he's wearing, the kind a nobleman might own? Before you can get a better look, they turn down another street and disappear from view. Should we follow them? Richard asks eagerly. You consider it. On one hand, you're curious about both the missing Chandler and the nobleman's stolen belongings. On the other hand, getting involved in other people's dangerous business is a good way to end up missing yourself. No, you decide reluctantly. We stick to the plan, the pony first, then the crusty loaf. Richard looks disappointed but doesn't argue. As your apprentice, he's obliged to obey you, at least in theory. The prancing pony comes into view ahead. Unlike this morning when it was quiet and nearly empty, the tavern is now showing signs of life. The door stands open, lanterns are being lit inside, and you can hear voices and laughter already. Another night in medieval England is about to begin, with all its dangers and delights, and you're walking straight into the middle of it, whether wisdom suggests you should or not. The prancing pony is already buzzing with early evening activity when you push open the door. The familiar smell of ale, sweat and wood smoke wraps around you like an old blanket. Unpleasant, but somehow comforting in its familiarity, a far cry from your clean, comfortable bed right now. "Well, look what the cat dragged in," calls the barmaid, a plump, red-faced woman named Mary who's been serving drinks here since before you were born. "Come to pay for my chair, have you?" You nod sheepishly and make your way to the bar, which is really just a plank of wood laid across 2 barrels. Richard follows close behind, eyes wide as he takes in the tavern's early evening crowd. 6 pence, Mary says firmly, holding out her hand. You dig into your pouch and pay her, adding an extra penny as a peace offering. "Sorry about that. Don't remember much about last night?" "Not surprised," she snorts. "You were singing that song about the bishop and the milkmaid. Lucky there weren't any church folk here." Your face heats up. You really need to work on your drinking habits. "Actually," you say, lowering your voice, "I'm looking for some information." Mary raises an eyebrow. "Information costs extra." You slide another penny across the bar. Medieval Google isn't cheap. "Did you see a young nobleman in here last night? Well-dressed, educated speech?" Mary thinks for a moment. "Can't say I did. We don't get many nobles here. They prefer the gilded cup or the king's arms." She leans closer. "Why? You in trouble with the quality?" "Not me," you assure her. "I've been hired to find something that went missing." Her eyes narrow. "You playing constable now?" That's dangerous work. Just asking questions. Oh, and what about Martin the Chandler? Seen him lately? A shadow crosses Mary's face. Not since last night. He was in here early, then went to the Boar's Head. She lowers her voice. There's talk he never made it home. Any idea who he was with? Mary glances around and leans closer. Stranger, big fellow with a scar. Bad business if you ask me. The same man you spotted in the street earlier. This can't be a coincidence. Thanks, Mary. One more thing. Anyone trying to sell fine clothes or a signet ring today? She gives you a sharp look. You asking for yourself or for the law? For 10 shillings, you admit. Mary nods, understanding the motivation. Try Ned the peddler. He deals in found items, usually drinks at the Crusty Loaf this time of evening. Richard tugs at your sleeve. Master, look who just came in. You turn to see William the tax collector entering the tavern. Didn't you just bribe him this morning? What's he doing here? Evening, William, you call, figuring it's better to acknowledge him than pretend you haven't seen him. Drink? He looks startled to see you, then recovers. Cooper? Yes, a drink would be welcome. Mary pours 3 cups of ale, giving you a questioning look. You nod. You're paying. Money is flowing out of your pouch like water today. What brings you here so early? You ask William casually. He glances around before answering. Official business. Tax office sends their regards. That's odd. The tax office doesn't usually do evening collections. Something's off. Anything I should know about? You probe. William takes a long drink before answering. Just routine, though there are rumours of counterfeit coins circulating. The king takes a dim view of that. Counterfeiting is serious business, as in they cut off your hands then execute you serious. Medieval monetary policy doesn't mess around. Haven't seen any, you say truthfully. Good, good. William drains his cup with surprising speed. Well, must be off. More visits to make. After he leaves, Mary leans across the bar. He wasn't here on tax business, she says flatly. How do you know? Because he was meeting with that stranger, the scarred one. Saw them here yesterday whispering in the corner like conspirators. The plot thickens, as they say. A tax collector, a scarred stranger, a missing chandler, and a robbed nobleman, all somehow connected. We should get to the Crusty Loaf, you tell Richard. Find this peddler Ned before he drinks himself useless. Richard nods eagerly, but as you turn to leave, the door bursts open again. This time it's Agnes, your wife, looking flustered. There you are, she exclaims, and I've been looking everywhere. What's wrong? You ask, immediately concerned. Agnes rarely enters taverns. It's Martin, she says. They found him. Your stomach tightens. Where? Floating in the mill pond, she says grimly. Throat cut. The tavern goes quiet as people overhear. Then the murmuring starts, the medieval rumour mill cranking into high gear. Did you hear? The chandler's dead, murdered. Who would do such a thing? It spreads like wildfire, which, in a medieval town built of wood and thatch, is a very real and terrifying comparison. We should go, you mutter to Richard. Murder makes everything complicated, and you suddenly want no part of this mystery. But Agnes grabs your arm. There's more. They found fine clothes and a gold ring in his possession. The constable is asking questions. Oh, hell. The nobleman's stolen goods in the hands of a murdered man? This just got a whole lot more dangerous. Did they find a cloak? Boots with silver buckles? You ask quietly. Agnes gives you an odd look. How did you know? Lucky guess, you lie. Let's get out of here. The three of you exit the prancing pony just as the church bells ring 6 o'clock. The streets are filling with evening activity now, shopkeepers heading home, labourers seeking entertainment, women hurrying to finish errands before full dark makes the roads unsafe. "Why are you asking about Martin and fancy clothes?" Agnes demands once you're outside. You quickly explain about the nobleman's commission. Richard, bless him, adds unnecessary dramatic flourishes about solving the crime and bringing justice. Agnes is not impressed. "So you're sticking your nose into a murder investigation for 10 shillings? Have you lost your mind?" Put that way, it does sound rather stupid. "I just need to tell Master Harrington what happened to his belongings," you argue. "Then I'm done with it." "And collect your other 5 shillings, Agnes adds dryly. "Well, yes, that too." She sighs the deep sigh of a medieval wife who's seen her husband make questionable decisions before. "Fine, but you're taking me with you. Someone needs to keep you out of trouble." Richard beams. "Like a proper investigation team." Agnes and you both ignore this. "We should go to St. Catherine's Monastery," you decide. "Tell Master Harrington what's happened before he hears it from someone else." And before the constable starts wondering why the stolen goods were found on Martin, Agnes points out sensibly, she's right. In medieval justice, being connected to a crime, even tangentially, can be dangerous. Best to establish your legitimate involvement early. The monastery sits on a hill overlooking the town, its stone walls glowing golden in the evening sun. Unlike the cramped, noisy streets below, the monastery grounds are peaceful and orderly. Monks in brown robes move quietly between buildings, while a few wealthy visitors stroll the gardens. You approach the gatehouse, suddenly aware of your working clothes and the wood shavings still clinging to your hair. The monk at the gate regards you suspiciously. "We're here to see Master James Harrington," you explain. "He's expecting us." The monk looks sceptical, but another figure appears behind him, a young novice with bright eyes. "I know Master Harrington," the novice says. "I'll take them." As you follow him across the courtyard, Agnes whispers, "How does a monastery novice know a nobleman's son?" You shrug. The church connects all levels of society in strange ways. The guest quarters are in a separate building, far more luxurious than the monks' Spartan cells. The novice leads you to a door, knocks softly, and announces, "Visitors for Master Harrington." The door opens to reveal James, still in his borrowed commoner's clothes, but looking considerably more composed than this morning. "The Cooper," he says, sounding surprised. "I wasn't expecting you so soon." "There have been developments," you say carefully, aware of the novice hovering nearby. "Might we speak privately?" James dismisses the novice and ushers you into his chamber. It's a simple room by noble standards, but far nicer than your home. A real bed with linen sheets, a writing desk, a window with actual glass instead of oiled paper. "Who are these people?" James asks, gesturing to Agnes and Richard. "My wife and apprentice," you explain. "They're trustworthy." James doesn't look convinced, but he motions for you to continue. "Your belongings have been found," you tell him, "but there's a complication." As you explain about Martin the Chandler's death and the discovery of the stolen items, James's face grows increasingly pale. "Murder!" he whispers. "And they found my ring on him? And your clothes," Agnes adds. "The constable has them now." James paces the small room. "This is a disaster. I need those items back, especially the ring. It bears my family crest. If word gets to my father that I lost it in a common tavern—" "There's more," you say. "The man was seen arguing with a stranger last night, tall with a scar on his cheek. And this same stranger has been meeting with William the tax collector." What does a tax collector have to do with this? James demands. You shrug. Unknown, but it seems like more than coincidence. James stops pacing. I need that ring back, tonight, without my family finding out. The constable has it now, Agnes points out. You'll have to explain why it was in a dead man's possession. I can say it was stolen, James argues. That's true enough. And what were you doing in a common tavern where you might be robbed? You counter. James flushes. That's not the constable's business. Agnes steps forward. Forgive my boldness, sir, but perhaps honesty would serve you best here. A man is dead. If you were the last to see him alive, I wasn't, James snaps. I never met this Chandler I was drinking, yes, but I remember nothing after the crusty loaf. I woke up in the Boar's Head, missing my belongings. You exchange glances with Agnes. Claiming a blackout from drinking might save James's pride, but it doesn't help solve the mystery. Maybe we should retrace your steps, Richard suggests. Go to the Crusty Loaf, see if anyone remembers who you were with. It's actually a sensible suggestion. You nod approvingly at your apprentice. I can hardly walk into a common tavern now, James protests. Not with a murdered man found with my ring? You're already dressed for it, Agnes points out, gesturing to his borrowed clothes. James looks down at himself and grimaces. I suppose I am. We'll go with you, you offer. Safety in numbers. What you don't say is that you're still hoping to earn those remaining 5 shillings. A murder complicates things, but it doesn't change the fact that you found his belongings, technically completing the job. Very well, James agrees reluctantly, but we must be discreet. The Crusty Loaf is significantly less reputable than the Prancing Pony. Located near the tanneries, which explains the perpetual smell, it caters to a rougher crowd, labourers, dock workers, and those who prefer not to answer questions about their occupations. The 4 of you pause outside its low doorway. Music and loud voices spill out into the street, along with the yellow glow of tallow candles, the cheap, smelly kind made from animal fat rather than beeswax. Charming, James mutters. Stay close, you advise, and let me do the talking. Inside, the Crusty Loaf is already packed despite the relatively early hour. The ceiling is low, blackened with years of smoke, and the floor is bare earth covered with rushes that look like they haven't been changed in months. The smell is challenging. How do people breathe in here? James whispers, pressing a handkerchief to his nose. Through their mouths, you reply. Come on. You push your way toward the bar, keeping Agnes and the others close behind you. The tavern keeper, a huge man with massive arms and a missing ear, regards you suspiciously. What'll it be? He grunts. 4 ales, you say, placing coins on the sticky wooden surface. And some information, if you're selling. His single eyebrow raises. Depends on what you're buying. You slide another coin across. Looking for Ned the peddler. The tavern keeper jerks his head toward the back corner. Over there, been waiting for someone all evening. You collect your drinks, served in chipped earthenware mugs that look like they've never been washed, and make your way to the indicated corner. Ned the peddler is a skinny, rat-faced man with darting eyes and fingers that never stop moving. He looks up as you approach, suspicious until he recognizes you. Cooper, he acknowledges, don't usually see you in here. Oh, special occasion, you say, sitting down across from him. Your companions crowd onto the bench beside you. Ned's eyes flick over them, lingering curiously on James. Despite the common clothes, James's posture and clean fingernails mark him as someone who doesn't belong. Mary at the Pony said you might have come across some interesting items recently, you say casually, sliding another coin toward him. Ned pockets it smoothly. Maybe. What sort of items? Fine clothes, a signet ring, gentlemen's boots. Ned's face gives nothing away, but his fingers twitch. Popular items these days. Funny you should ask. Oh? Someone else was asking earlier. Big fellow, scar on his cheek. You feel James stiffen beside you. What did you tell him, you ask? Ned shrugs. Same thing, I'll tell you. I don't have those items. Never did. But you know who does? Agnes presses. Ned's eyes narrow at her intrusion into men's business, but he answers. New, past tense, considering he's currently decorating the mill pond. Martin the Chandler, you say flatly. Ned nods. Got them from a girl who works at the Boar's Head, Eliza, the keeper's daughter. She found our fancy friend here, he nods at James. Passed out in the back room, helped herself to his things. James half rises in indignation, but you pull him back down. So Martin bought the stolen goods from Eliza, you clarify. For a good price too, was planning to sell them out of town next market day. Ned takes a swig of his ale. Guess that plan's gone to hell now. Did Martin know who the items belonged to? Agnes asks. Ned shrugs. Doubt it. Girl probably didn't mention it. Safer that way. And the scarred man, you press. What's his interest? No idea, but he seemed mighty keen, offered real silver for information. Ned gives you a pointed look, more than you're offering. You're about to respond when a commotion at the door draws everyone's attention. 3 men in the constable's livery are pushing their way into the tavern. The music stops abruptly. We're looking for information about Martin the Chandler, the lead constable announces. Anyone who was with him last night, step forward now. The tavern falls deathly silent. Medieval law enforcement isn't known for its gentle questioning techniques. Back door, Ned mutters, already sliding off his bench. Now. You don't need to be told twice. The last thing you want is to be questioned by the constable about a murder victim while sitting next to the owner of the stolen goods found on the body. That's the kind of coincidence that gets people tortured for confessions. The 4 of you follow Ned through the kitchen, dodging a surprised cook, and out into a narrow alley behind the tavern. The evening air, despite the nearby tannery, feels fresh and clean after the tavern's miasma. What now? James demands, looking shaken. Now we visit the Boar's Head, you decide. Have a word with young Eliza. Ned is already melting into the shadows. You didn't hear it from me, he calls softly before disappearing. Richard looks excited. This is better than a mystery play, real murder, stolen goods, constables. Agnes cuffs him gently on the ear. This isn't entertainment, boy. A man is dead, and I'm still missing my ring, James adds grimly. Let's go find this thieving girl. As you make your way through darkening streets toward the Boar's Head, you can't help wondering how a simple commission turned into such a tangled mess. You were just supposed to find some stolen items, collect your payment, and go home. Instead, you're investigating a murder, dodging constables, and dragging your wife and apprentice into danger, all for 5 shillings. The evening's barely started, and already it's proving to be one of the more eventful nights of your life. Medieval entertainment, indeed. The Boar's Head is in full swing by the time you arrive. Unlike the relative quiet of your morning visit, the tavern is now packed with bodies. The air thick with smoke, sweat, and the yeasty smell of ale. A man in the corner is playing a crude fiddle while another beats a small drum, the music barely audible over the roar of conversation and laughter. Is it always this crowded? James asks, looking uncomfortable as a large man bumps into him without apologizing. This is nothing, you tell him. Wait until midnight. The 4 of you push your way toward the bar where Walter the tavern keeper is pouring ale as fast as his arms can move. His wife is collecting money, her sharp eyes missing nothing. Cooper, she calls when she spots you. Back for more punishment, and you've brought friends. You force a smile. Just thirsty. Seen Eliza about? Her eyes narrow slightly. What do you want with my daughter? Just a question about a patron from last night, you say casually. She's busy, serving the back tables. You nod and order 4 ales, which she serves with a suspicious look. As you pay, you ask, "Heard about Martin the Chandler?" The tavern keeper's wife doesn't flinch. Terrible business. Wife's beside herself, I hear. They're saying he was last seen leaving here, you press. Lots of people leave here, she replies flatly. Can't keep track of them all. Her defensive tone tells you she knows more than she's saying. You decide not to push it, yet you lead your group toward the back tables, where Eliza is indeed serving drinks. She's pretty in a rough-edged way, her cheeks flushed from the heat and exertion. When she sees Richard, she smiles briefly before noticing the rest of your party. Master Cooper, she greets you, and others. Her eyes linger on James, a flicker of recognition crossing her face before she masks it. Got a moment? You ask. I'm working, she says, hefting a tray of empty mugs. It's about the gentleman who slept in your back room last night, Agnes says bluntly. The one who lost his belongings. Eliza's face goes carefully blank. Lots of drunks sleep it off back there. Can't remember them all. This one would stand out, James says quietly. He wasn't your usual patron. Eliza's eyes dart between your faces, calculating her options. Medieval women, especially working-class ones like her, learn early to judge which situations might turn dangerous. Let me drop these off, she says finally, nodding to her tray. Meet me by the back door in 5 minutes. Not all at once. Don't want to draw attention. Smart girl. You nod and watch her disappear into the crowd. I'll go first, Agnes decides. She might be more forthcoming with another woman. As Agnes slips away toward the back, you, James and Richard find an empty corner to wait. The tavern is growing louder as more patrons arrive. You recognize some faces. The blacksmith, a couple of weavers, the miller's sons. Working men, mostly, with a few women among them. This is how the common folk live? James asks, looking around with undisguised curiosity. It's so crowded. Not everyone has a monastery guest chamber, you remind him dryly. He has the grace to look embarrassed. I didn't mean, it's just different. Richard, who's been watching the room, suddenly stiffens. Master, look by the door. You follow his gaze to see William the tax collector entering the tavern again, and beside him, looking dangerous in the flickering candlelight, is the scarred man. We should get to the back door, you mutter. Now. You lead James and Richard through the crush of bodies, narrowly avoiding a barmaid carrying a pitcher of ale. The back of the tavern is marginally quieter, with a narrow corridor leading to the kitchen and storerooms. Agnes is already there with Eliza, their heads close together in conversation. They both look up as you approach. She's agreed to talk, Agnes informs you, but not here. Eliza nods. My break is in 10 minutes. Meet me at the old chapel ruins behind the tannery. Is that safe? James asks. Eliza gives him a long look. Safer than talking here with him watching. She nods discreetly toward the main room, where the scarred man is now visibly scanning the crowd. Who is he? You ask. Don't know his name, but he's been asking questions about your noble friend here. She looks directly at James. And about your missing ring. James starts. How did you... I've served drinks to lords before, she cuts him off. Your accent, your hands, the way you stand, might as well have nobleman painted on your forehead. You have to admire her perception. Despite James's commoner disguise, Eliza spotted him immediately for what he was. 10 minutes, she repeats. Now go before you're seen talking to me. You lead your group back through the crowded main room, careful to avoid William and the scarred man. Outside, the night air is cool after the tavern's stifling heat. Stars are emerging in the darkening sky, and the last church bells are ringing for the day. The old chapel ruins, Agnes muses, not the most reassuring meeting place. Especially in the dark, Richard adds with a slight tremor in his voice. His earlier excitement about investigating seems to be fading as the reality of nighttime dangers sets in. We need that information, James insists, and I want to know exactly what happened to my belongings. And maybe learn who killed Martin, you add grimly. The four of you make your way through darkening streets toward the old chapel ruins. Once a small shrine outside the town walls, it was abandoned after a fire decades ago. Now it's just a shell of stone walls overtaken by ivy, a place where lovers sometimes meet and children dare each other to enter at night. Stay close, you warn as you approach the ruins. And Richard, keep your voice down. The ruins loom before you, jagged walls creating strange shadows in the moonlight. You hesitate at what was once the doorway, suddenly aware of how perfect this setting would be for an ambush. "Hello?" you call softly. "Over here?" Eliza's voice comes from inside. You enter cautiously. Agnes and Richard close behind, James bringing up the rear. Your eyes adjust to see Eliza sitting on a fallen stone, a small lantern beside her casting just enough light to see by. "Were you followed?" she asks immediately. "I don't think so," you reply, though you can't be certain. "Good." She looks at James directly. "You were robbed. I know because I did it." James surges forward. "You little," Agnes grabs his arm. "Let her talk." Eliza doesn't flinch. "You passed out in our back room, dead drunk, had a purse full of silver and fine clothes that would fetch a good price. So you just took them?" James demands. She shrugs. "You're noble. You can get more. People like me can't." It's a harsh reality of medieval economics, the vast wealth gap between classes and the desperation it breeds. "What happened to my things after you took them?" James asks, visibly struggling to control his temper. "Sold the clothes and boots to Martin the chandler. He was going to take them to the next town's market." Eliza hesitates. "But I kept the ring, thought it might be worth more to the right buyer." "Where is it now?" James presses. "Hidden. After I heard about Martin, I got scared. That ring has a family crest, too recognizable." You lean forward. "What happened to Martin, Eliza?" She shakes her head. "I don't know for certain, but he left with that scarred man last night. The one who's been asking questions." "And you think the scarred man killed him?" Agnes asks. "Makes sense, doesn't it? Martin had stolen goods. Maybe the scarred man wanted them." James runs a hand through his hair in frustration. "But who is this man? Why is he working with the tax collector? None of this makes sense." Eliza picks at her nails nervously. "There's something else. I overheard them talking, William and the scarred man. They mentioned counterfeit coins." Your blood chills. That matches what William told you earlier about counterfeit currency circulating. "What exactly did they say?" you press. "Something about moving the operation, and the chandler knows too much." This was yesterday afternoon. The pieces start to click together in your mind. So Martin somehow discovered a counterfeiting operation involving William and this scarred stranger. They killed him to keep him quiet, then discovered he had your stolen goods. You look at James. "They've been looking for the ring specifically. But why?" Richard wonders. "Because," James says slowly, "my ring bears my family's crest. If counterfeit coins were linked to it somehow, they could implicate your family in the counterfeiting," Agnes finishes. "A perfect scapegoat. It's a clever plan. Counterfeiting is treason, punishable by death." If evidence pointed to a nobleman's family, it would create a scandal big enough to distract from any further investigation. "I need that ring," James says urgently to Eliza. "Now." She hesitates. "It's not here. It's hidden in—" A twig snaps outside the ruins. Everyone freezes. "Someone's coming," Richard whispers. Eliza quickly douses her lantern. "This way," she mouths, gesturing toward a low gap in the wall that might once have been a window. The five of you crouch down, listening as footsteps approach the ruins. There's the soft glow of another lantern, and then voices, William the tax collector and the scarred man. "She's not here," the scarred man says, his voice a deep growl. "Your information was wrong. The tavern boy said she came this way," William protests, his voice higher and nervous. "Said she was meeting someone. The ring wasn't in the Chandler's possessions," the scarred man continues. "The girl must have it. Without it, the whole plan falls apart." "We still have the dies and stamps," William argues. "We can make more coins." "And when they trace them back to us? No, we need the ring. A noble family taking the blame is our insurance." They move deeper into the ruins, their lantern lights sweeping dangerously close to your hiding spot. Eliza tugs your sleeve, pointing to the window gap. One by one, you slip through it, dropping to the soft ground outside. "Run," Eliza whispers once you're all through. "Meet me at the north gate in 1 hour." She doesn't wait for a response, darting away into the darkness. The rest of you follow her example, fleeing in the opposite direction until you're safely away from the ruins. "Well," Agnes says when you finally stop running, all of you breathing hard, "at least now we know what's happening." "Counterfeiting ring," you gasp, "with William involved." "And they killed Martin when he found out," Richard adds. James looks grim. "And they want my ring to frame my family for the crime." "We should go to the constable," Agnes suggests. "With what proof?" you counter. "The word of a tavern girl who admits to stealing from a nobleman, our overheard snippet of conversation? We need more. We need the ring," James insists. "If we can secure it, then go to the authorities." "Eliza said to meet her at the north gate in an hour," Richard reminds you. You nod. "That gives us time to think, and to see what's happening at the Gilded Cup." "The Gilded Cup?" Agnes questions. "Why there?" William mentioned dies and stamps, tools for making counterfeit coins. They must be keeping them somewhere. The Gilded Cup caters to merchants and officials, people who handle large sums of money. Perfect cover for introducing counterfeit coins. James looks thoughtful. It makes sense, and it's a place where a tax collector wouldn't raise suspicions. "But we can't just walk in," Agnes points out. "Not dressed like this." She's right. The Gilded Cup is for wealthy patrons. Your working clothes would stand out immediately. "I could go alone," James suggests. "I may be dressed poorly, but my speech and manners would get me in the door." "And if William or the scarred man is there?" you ask. James frowns. "Good point." "What about the back entrance?" Richard suggests. "Service door. Every tavern has one for deliveries." You clap him on the shoulder. "Good thinking. We could at least get a look inside, see if there's anything suspicious." "This is madness," Agnes mutters, but she doesn't object further. The Gilded Cup sits in the best part of town, its windows glowing with real glass and bright candlelight. Unlike the rough taverns you've visited so far, this one has an actual sign, a wooden cup covered in gold leaf, and a doorman checking patrons before they enter. You circle around to the back, finding the expected service entrance. Servers and kitchen staff hurry in and out carrying food and drink. The smell wafting from the kitchen makes your mouth water. Real meat, fresh bread, spices you can't afford. "How do we get in?" Richard whispers. You're considering the problem when the door bangs open and a harried-looking kitchen boy emerges, carrying a bucket of scraps. "Excuse me," Agnes calls softly. "We're looking for work. Any positions open?" The boy looks at your group suspiciously. You'd have to ask the steward, but he doesn't usually hire on the spot. "What about deliveries?" You try. "We have wine." You gesture vaguely behind you. "Kitchen's that way," the boy says, clearly not paid enough to care. "Tell them Henry sent you." With that minimal authorization, you slip through the service door into a busy kitchen. Cooks and servers rush around, preparing elaborate dishes for the wealthy patrons. No one gives you a second glance, assuming you belong there. "This way," James murmurs, guiding you through the kitchen toward a swinging door that presumably leads to the main tavern area. You pause at the door, peering through. The Gilded Cup is nothing like the taverns you're used to. The floors are clean wood, not packed earth. The tables are polished, set with real linen and silver cups. Candles of beeswax, not tallow, provide bright, sweet-smelling light. And the patrons? Merchants in fine wool, minor nobles, church officials, all conversing quietly over good wine. "There's William," Richard whispers, pointing discreetly. Sure enough, the tax collector is seated at a corner table with several other men. They're speaking intently, documents spread before them. From this distance, they could be discussing legitimate tax business or plotting treason. Impossible to tell. "We need to get closer," you decide. Agnes pulls a serving cloth from a nearby stack and ties it around her waist. "Follow my lead," she whispers, taking an empty tray. You watch in admiration as your wife transforms before your eyes, straightening her posture and adopting the deferential expression of a professional server. She walks confidently into the main room, tray held high, the picture of belonging. "That's my wife," you tell James and Richard proudly. "She's something else," James agrees, clearly impressed. Agnes makes her way through the tables, collecting empty cups as if that's her job. She works her way gradually toward William's table, eventually stopping right beside it to gather dishes. You watch tensely, ready to intervene if she's questioned, but Agnes plays her part perfectly. No one looks twice at a servant. After what feels like ages, she returns to the kitchen, her face tight with suppressed excitement. "Well?" You press once you've huddled in a quiet corner. "They're definitely counterfeiting," she confirms. "I heard Williams say they need to move the operation after what happened to the Chandler, and they're planning something tonight. A shipment of false coins going out with a wine merchant." "Did they mention the ring?" James asks urgently. Agnes nods. "William is worried. Says the scarred man, his name is Giles, by the way, is getting careless, drawing too much attention with his questions about the ring." "We should alert the constable," you say. "Not yet," James counters. "We still need the ring as evidence, and we need to catch them with the counterfeit coins." "The North Gate," Richard reminds you. "Eliza should be waiting by now." You nod. "Let's go get that ring, then we can decide our next move." As you slip back out through the service entrance, you can't help marvelling at how your quiet evening has transformed into this wild adventure, from a simple Cooper just this morning to investigating counterfeiting and murder, all because you drank too much last night. Medieval nights out, indeed. They never go quite as planned. You make your way through the town toward the north gate, sticking to shadows where possible. The streets are quieter now as the night deepens, though you can still hear music and voices from taverns you pass. Something doesn't feel right, Agnes murmurs as you approach the gate. You're about to ask what she means when you see it, or rather, who. The scarred man, Giles, is loitering near the gate, clearly waiting for someone. "He's looking for Eliza," James whispers. "He must have overheard us at the ruins." "So where is she?" Richard asks anxiously. You scan the area, finally spotting a small figure pressed into a shadowy doorway across the street. Eliza has seen the trap and is staying hidden. "We need to draw him away," you decide. Give Eliza a chance to escape. "How?" Agnes asks practically. You think for a moment. "James and I will create a diversion. Agnes, you and Richard try to reach Eliza." "What kind of diversion?" James asks warily. You grin. "The kind medieval men excel at, a drunken brawl." And with that, you stagger toward the gate, pulling James with you, ready to create the most convincing tavern fight of your life, without the benefit of actually being drunk this time. Medieval nightlife is many things, but boring isn't one of them. "Ready?" you mutter to James as you approach the north gate. "Not really," he admits. "I've never been in a tavern fight." "Just follow my lead, shove me, yell something insulting, and try to look angry." James nods nervously. Then, louder than necessary, he calls, "Watch where you're walking, you drunken fool." He gives you a shove that's far too gentle to be convincing. You mentally sigh, noblemen and their sheltered lives. "Who pushed me?" you bellow, spinning around dramatically. "Was it you, you prissy little man?" You give James a much more realistic shove that sends him stumbling backward. His eyes widen in surprise before he catches on and pushes back. "How dare you touch me?" he shouts, getting into the role. "Do you know who my father is?" "Don't know. Don't care," you roar, taking a wild swing that deliberately misses his face by inches. The commotion is having the desired effect. People are turning to watch, and more importantly, Giles the scarred man has shifted his attention from watching for Eliza to observing your growing fight. "You fight like a woman," James taunts, then immediately looks horrified at his own words. You bite back a laugh and instead charge at him, tackling him around the waist. You both go down in the dirt, rolling around and making a tremendous racket. From the corner of your eye, you see Agnes and Richard slipping across the street toward Eliza's hiding spot. "Keep it up," you whisper as you pretend to grapple with James. "We need another minute." James, now fully committed to the performance, grabs a handful of your hair and yanks, not quite pretending anymore. "Ow, that actually hurt," you hiss. "Sorry," he whispers back. "Got carried away." Your theatrical brawl has drawn quite a crowd now. Medieval entertainment is live and unscripted. A good fight is better than any play. Someone's even taking bets on who'll win. "The skinny one's got spirit, but my money's on the big fellow," you hear someone comment. "3 pennies on the small one," another voice calls. "He fights dirty. Look at that hair pull." Giles has moved closer, watching with the others. He doesn't look entirely convinced by your performance, but at least his attention is divided. You risk a glance across the street. Agnes, Richard, and Eliza are nowhere to be seen. Good. They've made it away. "Let's finish this," you mutter to James. With an exaggerated roar, you lift James up and pretend to slam him down, though you actually take most of his weight yourself. He groans convincingly and goes limp. "And stay down," you shout, staggering to your feet and making a show of dusting yourself off. The crowd gives appreciative cheers and jeers. Money changes hands as bets are settled. "Nothing to see here," you announce, swaying slightly as if drunk. "Just teaching this mouthy apprentice some respect." James, playing his part, stays down and moans pathetically. The crowd begins to disperse. Disappointed, the entertainment is over. Giles lingers longer than the others, his eyes narrowed suspiciously, but eventually he too moves away, heading back toward the centre of town. Once he's out of sight, you help James up. Not bad for your first tavern brawl, he grimaces, brushing dirt from his clothes. Is this how commoners typically settle disagreements? Only when we're sober enough to miss each other when we swing, you joke. Come on, let's find the others. You make your way to the predetermined meeting spot, a small shrine to St. Nicholas near the north wall. Agnes, Richard and Eliza are waiting in its shadow. "Did you get it?" you ask immediately. Eliza nods, pulling a small bundle from inside her bodice, the medieval equivalent of a secure pocket. "Here," she says, unwrapping a cloth to reveal a gold signet ring with an ornate family crest. James snatches it eagerly, examining it in the dim light. "Thank God," he breathes, sliding it onto his finger. "My father would have killed me if this was lost." "What about the people who actually did kill someone?" Agnes reminds him pointedly. James has the grace to look abashed. "Yes, of course, the counterfeiters. We need to catch them with evidence," you say. "Eliza, what else do you know about their operation?" She glances around nervously before speaking. "Not much. But I heard William say something about a midnight shipment leaving from behind the Gilded Cup. Something about wine barrels." Your professional interest is piqued. Wine barrels? That's a good hiding place for counterfeit coins. The barrels would have secret compartments built in. "Who's the cooper who made them?" Richard asks, professional pride evident in his voice. "Does it matter?" James asks impatiently. "Actually, yes," you reply. "If I know who made them, I might know how the compartments work." Eliza shrugs. "No idea, but they're being loaded onto a merchant's wagon tonight. Edmund Blackwell's, I think." Agnes gasps. "Blackwell? He's one of the wealthiest merchants in town, and married to Lady Isabella," James adds. "My father does business with him." The pieces click into place. A respected merchant would be the perfect accomplice for moving counterfeit currency. His wagons travel between towns without much scrutiny, and he handles large sums of money regularly enough that no one would question new coins in his possession. So William and Giles make the coins, Blackwell moves them, and they all get rich while devaluing the king's currency, you summarise. "And they kill anyone who finds out," Richard adds grimly. "We need to alert the constable," Agnes insists. "With what proof?" James counters. "We need to catch them in the act. The midnight shipment," you decide. "If we can catch them loading the false coins." "I should go," Eliza says suddenly. "They'll notice I'm missing from the tavern." "Will you be safe?" Agnes asks with genuine concern. Eliza gives a bitter laugh. "Safe? Women like me are never safe, but I know how to handle myself." "Thank you," James says with surprising sincerity. "You didn't have to help us." "I didn't do it for you," she replies bluntly. "I did it because I don't want Martin's murder ignored just because he was common born." With that, she slips away into the darkness, heading back toward the Boar's Head. "Brave girl," Agnes comments, watching her go. "And not wrong about justice for common folk," you add. "If Martin had been a nobleman, half the king's guard would be searching for his killer." James shifts uncomfortably but doesn't argue. The inequality of medieval justice isn't something he can deny. "What now?" Richard asks. "It's hours until midnight." "We need a better plan than just watching from the shadows," you say. "And maybe some help." "The constable," Agnes begins. "Not yet," James interrupts. "If Blackwell really is involved, he has enough influence to make accusations against him disappear. We need irrefutable proof." You think for a moment. "I have an idea, but you're not going to like it." An hour later, you're questioning your own sanity as you crouch in a filthy alley behind the Gilded Cup. Agnes and Richard are positioned as lookouts at either end of the street, while you and James wait near the tavern's back door. Your plan is simple but dangerous. When the counterfeit coins are brought out to be loaded, you'll create a distraction while James verifies they're in the wine barrels. Then you'll both run to the night watchman's station and report the crime in progress. "This is madness," James whispers for the 10th time. "If they catch us..." "They won't," you promise, with more confidence than you feel. The back door of the Gilded Cup opens, spilling yellow light into the alley. A server tosses out a bucket of kitchen scraps, narrowly missing your hiding spot. "People actually live like this?" James mutters, recoiling from the smell. "In filth and darkness?" "Not by choice," you remind him. "Some of us don't have monastery guest rooms to retreat to." He falls silent, perhaps truly considering the vast gulf between his life and yours for the first time. More activity at the back door draws your attention. 2 men emerge, carrying what looks like a small chest between them. William the tax collector follows, glancing nervously up and down the alley. "Where's Blackwell?" one of the men asks. "Coming," William replies. "Had to make his goodbyes seem natural. Don't want anyone wondering why he left early." The men set down the chest in the shadows. You nudge James and point. That must be the counterfeiting tools, or perhaps the coins themselves. A few minutes later, the door opens again. Edmund Blackwell steps out, now dressed for travel in a heavy cloak despite the mild night. "Is everything ready?" he asks William. "Yes, just waiting for the wagon." As if on cue, the sound of wagon wheels and horse hooves comes from the street. A moment later, a small covered wagon appears at the alley entrance, driven by a nervous-looking young man. "My apprentice," Blackwell explains. "Trustworthy and discreet." The wagon backs into the alley. In the dim light, you can make out several wine barrels loaded in the back. "Those are from Simmons' workshop," you whisper to James. "See the marking? The widow Simmons' late husband made those." "Is that important?" James asks. "Maybe. They're good barrels, but I know how he made his secret compartments." The men begin transferring the contents of the chest into the wine barrels, removing the false bottoms just as you suspected. Even from your hiding place you can hear the distinctive clink of metal, coins, and lots of them. "That's our evidence," you whisper. "Now we need to..." A sudden shout from the street interrupts you. "Stop night watch." Your blood runs cold. That wasn't part of the plan. Everything happens at once. The counterfeiters freeze, Blackwell curses, and Richard appears at the alley entrance, pointing dramatically. There they are, officers the counterfeiters, just like I told you. 4 night watchmen push past him, clubs raised. "Nobody move!" their leader shouts. William makes a break for it, darting toward the tavern door. One of the watchmen tackles him, bringing him down hard on the cobblestones. "Richard, you idiot!" you hiss. "We weren't ready." "Sorry," he stage whispers back. They were about to change patrol. It was now or wait another hour. The night watchmen have everyone against the wall now. Blackwell, his apprentice, and the 2 men who were loading the coins. William is being hauled to his feet, blood streaming from his nose. "Check the barrels," the lead watchman orders. One of his men does so, pulling out handfuls of silver coins. "Counterfeits, sir. Good ones, but still false." "Arrest them all," the leader orders. "Counterfeiting is treason against the king." You and James exchange glances. Your plan worked. Sort of, though not as smoothly as intended. But something's bothering you. "Where's Giles?" you whisper. The scarred man? As if summoned by his name, a large shadow detaches itself from the darkness behind you. Before you can react, you feel cold steel against your neck. "Don't move," Giles growls. "Either of you." "Well, shit." "You've been interfering all night," he says, his breath hot against your ear. "The cooper and the nobleman playing detective. We didn't mean to get involved," you try, feeling the knife press harder. "Shut up, you're coming with me." Quietly, he jerks his head toward a side passage. "That way, now." With the knife at your back, you have little choice. You and James are forced down the narrow passage, away from the commotion where the night watch is arresting the counterfeiters. "Where are you taking us?" James demands, his noble courage asserting itself at the worst possible moment. "Somewhere to finish our conversation," Giles replies ominously. "I still have questions about that ring of yours." The passage opens into a small courtyard behind another building. A single torch illuminates what appears to be a storeroom door. Giles forces you both inside, then bars the door behind him. The storeroom is packed with crates and barrels. By the smell, spices and dried fruit, it must belong to a merchant. Small high windows let in slivers of moonlight, just enough to see by. "Sit," Giles orders, gesturing to a pair of crates. You and James obey, exchanging worried glances. This is not how either of you expected the night to end. "You know too much," Giles says, keeping his knife visible. "About the coins, about the chandler." "We don't care about your counterfeiting," James lies. "We just wanted my ring back." Giles laughs coldly. "Right, that's why you alerted the night watch? Because you don't care. That wasn't us," you say truthfully. "That was my idiot apprentice acting on his own." "Doesn't matter." Giles leans against a barrel. "William and Blackwell are done for, but I'm not going down for treason, and I need to make sure you two don't talk." The implication is clear. He's considering killing you both. "Oh, wait," James says desperately. "My father is Lord Pembroke. He would pay handsomely for my safe return." The mention of money gets Giles's attention. "How much?" 50 gold crowns, James offers without hesitation. Giles whistles. "That's a lot of coin. Real coin, I assume." "Of course. My father abhors counterfeiting. It devalues his own wealth." You marvel at James's quick thinking. He's buying time, which is exactly what you need. Agnes and Richard must have noticed you're missing by now. The question is whether they can find you. Giles paces, considering the offer. How would this work? I can't exactly walk up to Lord Pembroke's estate with his son in tow. "A letter," James suggests. "I'll write to my father with instructions for delivery of the gold. You can dictate whatever terms you want." "And then I just let you both go?" Giles snorts. "Take me for a fool? Take me to the monastery," James continues. "I have a friend there, Brother Timothy, the novice who showed these people to my room. He can act as intermediary." You're impressed. James is creating a plausible escape route that sounds convincing enough to keep Giles talking. "And what about him?" Giles jerks his head toward you. "He's just a cooper," James says dismissively, playing a role. "No threat to anyone." "Thanks," you mutter. "Shut up, both of you," Giles orders. "I need to think." While he paces, you surreptitiously examine the storeroom, looking for anything that might help. Your eyes land on a familiar shape in the corner, a barrel with the Widow Simmons mark. This must be one of Blackwell's storerooms. An idea forms in your mind. You know how these barrels work, how the secret compartments open, and if you're right about what's inside... "I've decided," Giles announces. "We're going to the monastery. The cooper comes too as insurance. One wrong move and he dies first." James nods, carefully not looking at you. "Stand up, slowly," Giles orders. As you rise, you deliberately stumble, falling against the barrel in the corner. Your fingers find the hidden catch, a knot in the wood that rotates just so, and the false bottom drops open. "Watch it," Giles snarls. "Sorry." you mumble, your hand now inside the compartment, fingers closing around exactly what you'd hoped to find. A bag of coins. Counterfeit coins, most likely, but they're solid metal regardless. As Giles steps forward to grab you, you swing the bag with all your strength, catching him square in the temple. Coins explode from the impact, ringing as they scatter across the floor. Giles staggers, stunned but not down. "James, run!" you shout, lunging for Giles's knife hand. You grapple with the larger man, struggling for control of the blade. James hesitates only a moment before darting to the door and lifting the bar. "Help!" he shouts into the night. Murder treason, the medieval equivalent of a 911 call, specific crimes that would bring immediate response. Giles roars in fury, smashing you against a stack of crates. Pain explodes across your back, but you hold onto his knife arm with desperate strength. "I'll kill you both," he snarls. "You'll try," you gasp, driving your knee up in a universal language understood by men throughout history. Giles doubles over with a strangled sound. You wrench away from him, scrambling toward the door where James is still shouting for help. You're almost there when Giles recovers enough to lunge, catching your ankle. You go down hard, chin hitting the packed earth floor. "Got you," Giles growls, dragging you backward. The storeroom door bursts open, flooding the space with torchlight. Agnes stands there, holding a heavy iron skillet like a weapon. Richard and 2 night watchmen behind her. "Get away from my husband," she says with deadly calm, before bringing the skillet down on Giles's head with a resounding clang. Medieval wives don't mess around. Giles crumples, finally unconscious. The night watchmen rush in to secure him. "How did you find us?" you ask Agnes as she helps you up. "Richard saw you being taken," she explains. "We followed at a distance, then went for help." You turn to the night watchman. "This man was part of the counterfeiting operation. He also murdered Martin the Chandler. We'll add it to his charges," one replies grimly. "Counterfeiting alone is enough for hanging, but murder means he'll be drawn and quartered as well." Medieval justice. Brutal, but straightforward. "Thank you," James says to all of you, looking genuinely moved. "You risked your lives for me, a stranger." "We risked our lives for justice," Agnes corrects him gently, "though I won't say no to those remaining 5 shillings. James laughs, a release of tension. "You shall have 10, and my father will hear of your courage." As the night watchmen drag Giles away, you step outside into the cool night air, suddenly aware of how filthy, bruised and exhausted you are. The church bells are ringing midnight. Your wild evening of medieval nightlife is finally winding down. "Home," Agnes suggests, slipping her hand into yours. "Home," you agree, never having wanted your straw mattress more. Richard yawns enormously. "What a night. Wait until I tell everyone at the Boar's Head tomorrow." "You're not going near a tavern for at least a week," you inform him. "We have 30 barrels to make for London, remember." His face falls, but only briefly. "Yes, but after that, can we investigate something else? Maybe those rumours about the ghost in the old mill?" "No," you and Agnes say simultaneously. Medieval nightlife, you reflect as you walk home through the darkened streets, is exciting enough without adding ghosts to the mix. Besides, your bed is calling. Not a comfortable modern one like yours, but still preferable to another adventure tonight. The walk home through the dark medieval streets is its own adventure. Without street lamps, the only light comes from the occasional lantern hanging outside a wealthy home, or from the moon when clouds permit. Most people carry their own lights after dark, candle lanterns for the rich, simple torches for everyone else. You, Agnes, and Richard have nothing, having left in daylight without planning for a night this long. Stay close, you warn Richard, who keeps wandering toward interesting sounds from alleyways. Nighttime isn't safe. He reluctantly falls back in line. But we just helped catch counterfeiters. We're heroes. Heroes can still get robbed, Agnes points out practically. Or worse. The night belongs to a different class of medieval society. Footpads, cut purses, drunks looking for fights, and women desperate enough to sell themselves in doorways. You pass one such woman huddled in a stone archway, her face gaunt in the moonlight. "Evening, good wife," she calls softly to Agnes. "Your men look tired. Send the young one my way for some comfort." Agnes ignores her, but Richard turns red to his ears, visible even in the darkness. "Keep walking," you mutter, steering him forward. The night watch passes, 2 men carrying halberds and a horn to sound alarm if needed. They nod at your group, but don't stop you. After the excitement at the storeroom, they have bigger concerns tonight. "Do you think they'll actually execute William and the others?" Richard asks, his voice small. "Counterfeiting is treason," you remind him, and treason means death. Agnes shivers. Drawn and quartered for the leaders, probably, hanging for the lesser accomplices. "But that's," Richard begins, "medieval justice," you finish. "Swift and brutal. It's a harsh reality of your time. Crime is punished severely, partly as a deterrent, partly as public entertainment. Executions draw crowds as large as any festival. People bring food, make a day of it. Will we have to testify?" Agnes asks suddenly. "At the trial?" You hadn't considered that. "I hope not. James has more standing as a witness. They'd take his word over ours." Another reality of medieval society. A nobleman's testimony outweighs a dozen commoners. You're nearing home when a figure steps out from a side street, making all 3 of you jump. But it's only James, looking oddly out of place in his commoner's clothes on your side of town. "I thought you'd be halfway to the monastery by now," you say, relieved it's not another threat. "I wanted to thank you properly." He holds out a small pouch that clinks heavily when he places it in your hand. 20 shillings, not just the 5 we agreed on. Your eyes widen. 20 shillings is nearly 2 months' earnings for a skilled craftsman like yourself. "That's very generous," you manage, knowing Agnes is already mentally spending it on house repairs and winter stores. "You saved more than my ring," James says earnestly. "You saved my family's reputation. If those counterfeit coins had been linked to our crest, will you be returning to your father's estate now?" Agnes asks. James nods. "At first light. Brother Timothy is arranging a horse." He hesitates. "I've asked him to keep my adventure between us." "Your secret is safe," you assure him. "No sense making an enemy of a nobleman by gossiping." "Good, because my father would—" He stops abruptly, eyes widening at something over your shoulder. "Look out." You whirl around to see a large man stumbling toward you, moving with the deliberate concentration of the thoroughly drunk. It's Walter, the tavern keeper, from the Boar's Head. "You!" he bellows, pointing at you with a wavering finger. "Cooper." "Evening, Walter," you reply cautiously. "Bit late to be out, isn't it?" "You got my daughter involved in this mess," he slurs, referring to Eliza. "Constables came to my tavern questioning her about stolen property, counterfeit coins. Of course the authorities would follow up on all angles. Poor Eliza must have been caught in the investigation." "She helped catch murderers and counterfeiters," Agnes says firmly. "She should be proud." Walter's face darkens. Proud? Proud? She could have been killed, and now my tavern's reputation is damaged. People saying we're connected to criminals. That's not fair, Richard protests. Eliza did the right thing. Walter rounds on him. And you making eyes at my daughter for months, I know what you're after. Richard blushes furiously. I respect Eliza, I would never. Enough, you interrupt, stepping between them. Walter, go home. Sleep it off. We can discuss this tomorrow if you're still angry. For a moment, it seems like Walter might throw a punch. Medieval disputes often end in fistfights. No lawyers, just immediate physical resolution, but instead, his shoulders slump. My wife's furious, he mutters. Says we should send Eliza to her cousins in Bristol. Get her away from this mess. That might be wise, Agnes says gently, just until things settle. Walter nods blearily, then seems to notice James for the first time. Who's this then? A friend, you say vaguely. Walter squints. Got noble bearing, this one, despite the clothes. He laughs humorlessly. Oh, look at us, tavern keeper, cooper and nobleman standing in the street at midnight. Could be the start of a joke. More like the end of a very long day, you suggest, eager to get home. Drinks on the house tomorrow, Walter announces suddenly. For all of you, even you, pretty boy. He nods at James. Thank you, but I'm leaving in the morning, James replies politely. Suit yourself. Walter weaves off into the darkness, still muttering to himself. Well, Agnes says after a moment, that was unexpected. Is that normal? James asks, looking bemused. For Walter, yes. He's either fighting mad or offering free drinks. No in between. You shake your head fondly. Despite his outburst, Walter's a decent sort. Most of the time, you continue toward home, James still accompanying you despite the fact that the monastery is in the opposite direction. Something else you wanted to tell us, you prompt after a while. He looks embarrassed. Actually, I don't know how to get back to St. Catherine's from here. You bite back a laugh. Of course, noblemen rarely navigate cities on their own, especially at night. They have servants for that. Richard, run ahead and tell your mother we'll be a bit longer, you instruct. Then get some sleep. We start on those London barrels at dawn. Richard looks disappointed to miss the end of the adventure, but obeys, trotting ahead toward your home. I'll walk you to the monastery, you tell James. Agnes, will you be all right going the rest of the way with Richard? She gives you a look that clearly says, I just knocked out a murderer with a skillet. I think I can manage our street. Aloud, she merely says, of course. Don't be too long. With a quick kiss on your cheek, she follows after Richard, leaving you alone with James. Your wife is remarkable, he comments as you change direction toward the monastery. Believe me, I know. You grin. I married up. James laughs, then grows thoughtful. I'm supposed to marry Lord Huffington's daughter next spring. I've met her twice. She seems appropriate. Appropriate? You raise an eyebrow. Well-bred, educated in feminine arts, properly devout. He sighs. Nothing like the women I met tonight. Like Eliza, you guess. He flushes. She was direct, honest, called me on my privilege without fear. That's common folk for you. Can't afford the luxury of dancing around truths. The streets are almost empty now as you approach the better part of town. The air smells cleaner here, with fewer open sewers and more gardens behind high walls. Can I ask you something? James says after a while. Go ahead. Are you happy? With your life, I mean. The question catches you off guard. It's not something medieval people typically ponder. Life is what it is, predetermined by birth, shaped by God's will. Happiness isn't really the point. I have work I'm good at, you reply, slowly. A wife I love, food most days, could be worse. But the hardship, James presses, the uncertainty, the mess of it all, you shrug. It's all I've known. What about you? Are you happy in your gilded cage? He looks startled at the question, clearly unused to such directness from a commoner. I don't know, he admits. I have everything I could want. except freedom. Freedom's overrated when you're starving, you point out. And comfort is meaningless when every choice is made for you. You walk in silence for a while, each considering the other's perspective. The moon emerges from behind clouds, illuminating the street with silver light. What will happen to them? James asks eventually. William, Blackwell, the others. Trial, then execution, you reply. Probably public, as a warning. And Giles, the worst death they can devise. He killed a man. James shudders. Medieval justice is harsh. You raise an eyebrow at his phrasing. Just medieval? It's the only justice we have. I meant, he stops, flustered. Of course. The monastery comes into view ahead, its walls pale in the moonlight, a fortress of faith offering sanctuary to those deemed worthy. The bells begin to toll for midnight prayers. Monks don't sleep through the night, but rise for devotions at regular intervals. Here we are, you announce unnecessarily. James hesitates at the gate. Would you join me for a drink first? There's a small tavern just there. He points to a modest building across from the monastery. I feel our adventure deserves a proper conclusion. You should say no. You're exhausted, bruised, and Agnes is waiting. But curiosity wins out. How often does a cooper share drinks with a nobleman as equals? One drink, you agree. The tavern, the Pilgrim's Rest, is nothing like the rowdy establishments you've visited tonight. It caters to visitors to the monastery, offering simple food and drink in a quiet setting. At this hour, it's nearly empty. You take a small table in the corner. James orders wine, not the finest they have, which surprises you. He's learning. To unlikely allies, he proposes, raising his cup. To surviving the night, you counter, touching your cup to his. The wine is better than anything served at the Boar's Head. You sip it slowly, savouring the rare treat. I've been thinking about Martin, James says suddenly. The chandler. What about him? He died because he discovered something by accident. Wrong place, wrong time. If it had been me instead, you'd have been protected by your name and wealth, you finish. Until they could frame you, at least. Exactly. James looks troubled. Is that justice? You snort. No, that's life. Justice is rare, even with the constables and courts doing their best. It shouldn't be that way. Now you laugh outright. Planning to change the world, my lord? Maybe in small ways, he says seriously, when I have my father's position someday. You study him, wondering if he means it or if this is just wine-fueled nobility. Either way, it's not your concern. Your worlds will separate again come morning. Speaking of positions, you say, changing the subject, I should get home. 30 barrels won't make themselves. Of course. James reaches into his pouch and places another coin on the table. For your trouble tonight. You shake your head. You've paid more than enough. Consider it an investment, then, in our unlikely friendship. You almost correct him. Friendship across class boundaries isn't really possible in your society, but the earnestness in his face stops you. Let him have this small rebellion against convention. Very well, you pocket the coin, though I don't expect we'll meet again. Perhaps not. He smiles slightly. But I'll remember the cooper who taught me how to start a tavern brawl. Outside, the night has grown cooler. You part ways at the monastery gate, James slipping inside to find Brother Timothy and his borrowed bed. The walk home is quiet and uneventful, the streets now mostly deserted except for the occasional night watchman or stray dog. You pass a man slumped in a doorway, dead drunk or just dead. It's impossible to tell in the darkness. Medieval nights claim many victims. Your thoughts turn to Martin the Chandler, floating face down in the mill pond. A life ended over greed and secrets. In the morning, his widow will arrange his burial, the town will gossip about his connection to counterfeiters, and within a week, he'll be largely forgotten. Another medieval statistic. By contrast, the arrests of William and Merchant Blackwell will cause a sensation. Their trials will be public, their executions well attended. Crime among the better classes is always more interesting to the masses. And what of you? Tonight's adventure will make a good story to tell in taverns. Carefully edited to remove James's involvement, of course. But tomorrow brings ordinary life again. Barrels to make, taxes to pay, survival to ensure. Your home appears ahead, a small building with your workshop attached. A faint light glows from within. Agnes waiting up despite the late hour. The sight fills you with warmth. In a world of uncertainty, some things remain constant. You're about to enter when something makes you pause and look back. The town sleeps under stars, its crooked buildings and narrow streets transformed by moonlight into something almost beautiful. In a few hours it will wake again, resuming its chaotic, vibrant life. For all its hardships and dangers, this medieval world is yours. Its taverns and alehouses, its music and stories, its rough justice and rougher pleasures, they make up the fabric of existence, as they have for generations before, and will for generations to come. You think of James returning to his world of privilege and constraint. For all his wealth, he'll never know the simple satisfaction of a hard day's work followed by well-earned ale among friends. Never experience the raw, unfiltered life of common folk with their bawdy songs and urgent pleasures. With a small smile, you push open your door, ready to face Agnes's questions and concerns. Tomorrow will bring consequences for tonight's adventures, but for now, you've survived another medieval night out, with a few more coins in your pocket and a story worth telling. In the soft glow of a single candle, Agnes looks up from her mending, relief washing over her face at the sight of you. "You're back," she says simply. "I'm home," you agree, the distinction important. In the medieval world, with all its perils and uncertainties, having a home to return to is no small blessing. Agnes rises to check you for new injuries, her hands gentle but thorough. "Any more trouble?" "None." You catch her hands and kiss them. "Just a final drink with our noble friend." She raises an eyebrow but doesn't question further. One of the many reasons you love her. "Richard's already asleep," she informs you, though he tried to wait up, kept saying he needed to record the night's adventures for posterity. You laugh softly. Boy's got grand ideas. Like his master, she smiles, the candlelight softening the lines of worry that the night etched into her face. "Come to bed. Dawn comes early." As you follow her to your simple sleeping area, just a curtained-off section of the main room, you reflect on how different this is from the monastery accommodations James is enjoying. Your mattress is straw-filled, your blankets rough wool, but Agnes will be there, warm and real beside you. Some luxuries can't be bought with noble birth or royal favour. You shed your dirty clothes, wincing at the bruises already forming from your fight with Giles. Agnes notices and reaches for a small pot of salve. "Hold still," she instructs, applying the pungent ointment to the worst spots. It smells of herbs and beeswax, the medieval equivalent of first aid. "What do you think will happen to Eliza?" you ask as she works. Agnes sighs. "If she's smart, she'll go to Bristol, start fresh where no one knows her connection to all this." She did the right thing. The right thing often comes with a cost. Agnes recaps the salve pot, especially for women. Another harsh reality of medieval life. Justice and fairness aren't the same thing, particularly across gender lines. Finally, you lie down together. The events of the day settling into your tired muscles. Outside, a dog barks in the distance. The last church bells toll, marking the end of another day. Agnes, you murmur, already half asleep. Next time I say I'm going out for just one drink, I'll lock the door behind you, she suggests with a quiet laugh. Probably wise. Medieval nights out. They rarely go as planned, but they make for good stories, assuming you survive to tell them, and sometimes that's enough. Morning arrives with brutal efficiency. The first cockcrow rips through your dreams, dragging you unwillingly back to consciousness and the various aches that have settled into your body overnight. Everything hurts. Your back from being slammed against crates, your knuckles from the fake tavern brawl, your head from the wine with James. Agnes is already up, stoking the small fire and hanging a pot of water to heat. She moves with the quiet efficiency of someone who's been awake for hours, though the pale light filtering through the oiled paper window suggests it's barely dawn. You're alive then, she notes, seeing your eyes open. Wasn't sure after the state you crawled in last night. Barely, you groan, sitting up with considerable effort. Did I dream it all? Counterfeiters, murderers, noblemen in disguise. If you did, we shared the same dream. She hands you a cup of small beer, the weak morning ale that's safer than water and helps take the edge off morning discomfort. Richard's already up and at the workshop. That surprises you. Your apprentice usually needs multiple shakings to rise at dawn. Said he couldn't sleep, Agnes explains, too excited about everything that happened. You gulp the ale, feeling it wash away the worst of the night's residue from your mouth. And the 20 shillings? That was real? She smiles, patting the small pouch tucked securely in her apron. Very real. I've put aside 6 for winter stores, 3 for new tools you've been wanting. 2 for Richard's mother as promised, and kept 9 for emergencies. You smile despite your aching head. Agnes and her careful accounting, one of the many reasons your household survives while others falter. Medieval economics leaves little room for error, especially for craftsmen like yourself. Any word from town, you ask, forcing yourself to stand. The day waits for no one. Hangover or not. Market's buzzing like a kicked beehive, she reports. Mary from next door stopped by for salt and couldn't talk about anything else. Arrests, counterfeiting, treason, it's better than a miracle play. How much do they know? Everything, nothing, depends who's telling it. Agnes shrugs. Some say William was running the whole operation himself. Others claim Blackwell was the mastermind. No one's mentioned us, though. Small mercies. The last thing you need is to be summoned as a witness in a treason trial. What about Eliza, Walter? The boar's head is closed today, unusual for them. Agnes hands you a piece of bread with a thin scraping of honey, a luxury you rarely indulge in, but apparently today warrants it. Rumour says Eliza left for Bristol with the dawn cart. Smart girl, a fresh start is her best option now. You chew the bread slowly, letting the sweetness of honey momentarily distract from your various pains. Outside, the town is coming to life. Voices calling, animals being led to work, the distant clang of the blacksmith already at his forge. I should get to the workshop, you sigh. Those London barrels won't make themselves. Agnes gives you a critical once-over. You look like you've been trampled by horses. Take the physic I made first. She hands you a small cup of murky liquid. You sniff it cautiously. Herbs, honey, and something sharper underneath. What's in it? Best not to ask, she advises. Widow Jenkins gave me the recipe. Says it cured her husband's fighting injuries more than once. Medieval medicine. A blend of folk wisdom, herbal knowledge, and blind hope. Still, Agnes's remedies usually work better than the physicians, and without the bloodletting. You down it in one gulp, fighting the urge to gag. Whatever's in it burns all the way down. Christ's wounds, you gasp. Are you sure that wasn't poison? If it was, you'd be dead already, she replies practically. Give it a few minutes to work. You grab your work apron and head outside, the morning air shockingly crisp after the stuffiness of your small home. The street is already busy with people starting their day, women balancing water buckets, apprentices running errands, a priest hurrying toward early mass. Your workshop sits adjacent to your home, a simple wooden structure with a roof that leaks when it rains heavily. Inside, Richard is already preparing wood staves for the day's barrel making, his face lighting up when he sees you. Master, you're up. He looks like he wants to bombard you with questions, but is restraining himself admirably. Barely, you grunt, reaching for your tools. Let's get started on those London barrels. Yes, but don't you want to go to the square first? They're announcing the charges against the counterfeiters. Of course he wants to witness the spectacle. Medieval justice is public business, part deterrent, part entertainment. You're about to refuse when you realise you're curious yourself. Besides, the physic Agnes gave you needs time to work before you trust yourself with sharp tools. Fine, you relent. But just for a moment. Richard practically bounces with excitement as you walk together toward the town square. The medicine is beginning to take effect, replacing the worst of your pain with a peculiar warmth. Whatever Widow Jenkins put in that concoction, it's potent. The square is packed with people by the time you arrive, a sea of bodies pressed together to hear the town crier. The smell is memorable, hundreds of unwashed bodies in the morning sun, most having just left homes where bathing is a monthly event at best. You're suddenly very aware of your own stale tavern smell from last night. There he is, Richard points to a raised platform where the town crier, resplendent in his official livery, is preparing to make an announcement. Beside him stand several night watchmen, looking important in their leather jerkins with the town's insignia. The constable himself is present, a rare sight, suggesting the seriousness of the matter. Hear ye, the crier bellows, his voice carrying across the crowd. By order of His Majesty's court, the following persons stand accused of high treason through counterfeiting of the king's currency. A murmur runs through the crowd. Treason trials are rare entertainment. William Stanton, tax collector, the crier announces, a mix of jeers and gasps. A royal official involved in crime is always scandalous. Edmund Blackwell, merchant. This generates true shock. Blackwell was respected, wealthy, established. His fall will be talked about for generations. Giles Fletcher, known criminal. Less surprise here. A man with a scar and a reputation for violence fits everyone's idea of a villain. And 6 accomplices, the crier finishes, naming several people you don't recognise, probably workers and servants who assisted the operation. The accused will stand trial 3 days hence, he continues. Witnesses with information are commanded to present themselves to the constable. You exchange glances with Richard. So far, no mention of you, Agnes, or James. Perhaps you'll avoid involvement after all. Additionally, the crier adds, the murder of Martin Chapman Chandler has been attributed to the accused Giles Fletcher. His wife and children will receive compensation from the seized assets of the criminals. That's unexpected. Medieval justice rarely compensates victims' families. Perhaps James had something to do with it. A quiet word in the right ear. Their punishment will be death then, asks a woman near you. Drawn and quartered for the ringleaders, replies a man confidently. Hanging's too good for traitors. They say Blackwell's wife knew nothing, comments another. She collapsed when they took him. The crowd buzzes with similar conversations, speculation mixing with outrage and a certain grim satisfaction. Everyone loves to see the mighty fall, especially when it reinforces the belief that wickedness is punished eventually. Excuse me, Cooper. You turn to find a young man in the constable's livery at your elbow. Your heart sinks. So much for avoiding involvement. The constable requests your presence, he says formally, and your apprentice. Richard looks simultaneously terrified and thrilled. You just feel tired. Now? You ask. If you please, the young man replies, making it clear it's not a request. You follow him through the crowd, people parting curiously to let you pass. Nothing draws attention in a medieval town quite like being summoned by authorities. The constable's headquarters is a stone building near the town hall, one of the few structures that isn't primarily wood. Inside, it smells of parchment, ink, and the particular mustiness of rarely opened windows. You're led to a small room where the constable himself sits behind a desk scattered with documents. He's a portly man with a perpetually harried expression. Keeping order in a medieval town is largely a futile exercise. "Ah, the Cooper," he says, looking up. "And the apprentice. Sit." You both obey, taking the rough wooden stools opposite his desk. "I understand you were involved in last night's events," he begins without preamble. "We witnessed some things," you say cautiously. "According to the night watchman, you did considerably more than witness." He shuffles through some papers. Something about alerting them to counterfeit coins being loaded into barrels. Richard can't contain himself. "We discovered the whole operation, sir. The tax collector, the merchant, the murder of Martin." You elbow him sharply. "We happened to observe suspicious activity and reported it, as any loyal subjects would." The constable looks between you, clearly not believing your modesty, but appreciating your discretion. "The young nobleman," he says after a moment. "He's gone?" You nod. "Back to his father's estate, I believe." "Convenient." The constable leans back. "His name appears nowhere in my reports, almost as if he was never here." "Perhaps he wasn't," you suggest blandly. A thin smile crosses the constable's face. "Indeed, much simpler that way." He taps his fingers on the desk. "However, I still need statements from you both, for the official record." For the next hour, you and Richard give carefully edited versions of the night's events, omitting any mention of James or his stolen ring. The constable takes notes, occasionally asking questions that suggest he knows more than he's saying. "And the tavern girl?" he asks finally. "The one who allegedly stole items from a patron? We heard she's left town," you reply. "Family in Bristol, I believe." He nods slowly. "So I've been told. Convenient timing. The timing of many things has been convenient," you observe. The constable actually laughs at that. "Indeed it has." He sets down his quill. "Very well, I have what I need. You're not required at the trial unless summoned, which I doubt you will be. Evidence against the accused is substantial." You stand, ready to escape, but the constable raises a hand. "One more thing. There's been talk of a reward for information leading to the breaking of this counterfeiting ring." Your interest perks up despite yourself. More money would certainly be welcome. "Since the nobleman who was robbed seems to have vanished," the constable continues with deliberate emphasis, "and the girl who did the robbing has left town, I find myself with unclaimed funds that should rightfully go to those who helped bring these criminals to justice." He reaches into a drawer and produces a small but heavy pouch. 20 shillings. Division as you see fit between yourselves and your wife. You accept the pouch with a mixture of surprise and gratitude. Combined with James's payment, this is more money than you typically see in half a year. Thank you, you say sincerely. The constable nods. Justice serves those who serve justice, he says, then ruins the dignified moment by adding, now get out. I have 9 more witnesses to question before midday. Outside, Richard can barely contain his excitement. Another 20 shillings, we're rich. We're not rich, you correct him. We're just slightly less poor than yesterday. What will you spend it on? He asks eagerly. You consider the question as you walk back toward your workshop. Medieval life offers limited options for spending money, food, shelter, tools, perhaps a few small comforts. No exotic vacations or fancy gadgets to tempt you. A new roof for the workshop, you decide. Maybe better wood for those London barrels. Richard looks disappointed by your practicality, but you've lived through enough lean winters to know that survival trumps luxury. And perhaps, you add, seeing his fallen face, a small celebration at the Prancing Pony when the work is done. Mary did offer us free drinks, after all. His expression brightens immediately. Do you think they'll let me tell the story of our adventure? I've been working on how to describe the fight with Giles. With considerable exaggeration, I expect, you say dryly. Only the boring parts need exaggeration, he protests. You laugh despite yourself. The boy has a point. As you return to the workshop, Agnes meets you at the door, her expression worried. What happened? People said the constable summoned you. Just taking our statements, you assure her, handing over the second money pouch, and giving us a reward for our help. Her eyes widen as she feels the weight of the pouch. More? Another 20 shillings. She crosses herself reflexively. God's providence, or the constable's pragmatism, you think but don't say. Either way, your family's financial situation has improved dramatically overnight. Back to work now, you tell Richard firmly. Those London barrels need finishing by Michaelmas. He nods and heads inside, still practically vibrating with excitement. You start to follow but pause when Agnes touches your arm. There's something else, she says quietly. A monk came from St. Catherine's while you were gone, left this. She hands you a small folded paper sealed with wax. A proper letter, something rarely received by common folk. The seal bears a noble crest that you recognize immediately. From James? You ask, surprised. Agnes nods. The monk said a brother Timothy asked him to deliver it on his way to market. You break the seal and unfold the letter carefully. The parchment is fine, the ink dark and expensive. The handwriting is elegant in the way that comes from years of dedicated education. To the cooper and his family, my journey home has begun, though I find myself strangely reluctant to return to the life that awaits me. Our adventure, though dangerous, showed me a world I never truly saw before, despite living alongside it my entire life. I have spoken with the constable regarding Martin Chapman's family. They will be provided for from Blackwell's seized assets. It is small justice for a life taken, but better than the nothing they might otherwise have received. Eliza has been given passage to Bristol on a merchant cart in my household's employ. The driver has instructions to see her safely to her family and provide a small sum to ease her new beginning. She is a remarkable young woman, brave and clear-eyed in a world that offers few rewards for such qualities in her sex. As for yourself, your wife, and your apprentice, I find myself indebted in ways that coin cannot repay. You showed me not only the tavern life I sought for amusement, but also the courage and decency that exists beyond the walls of privilege I have known. Should you ever have need, this letter bears my family seal. Present it to any of our household or business interests, and you will find assistance forthcoming. Until our paths cross again, though I suspect they may not. James Harrington, son of Lord Pembroke. You fold the letter carefully and tuck it into your shirt. Some things are too valuable to risk losing. Well, Agnes prompts. What does it say? He says thank you, you summarize, feeling the inadequacy of the description but unable to articulate the strange connection you feel to someone from such a different world. And that he helped Eliza get to Bristol safely, Agnes nods approvingly. Decent of him. Yes, you agree, surprisingly so. The church bells ring for mid-morning prayers, marking the passage of time. The town continues its rhythms around you. Market stalls opening, children running errands, craftsmen at work, all under a sky that's clearing to blue. Your medieval world with its taverns and dangers, its strict hierarchies and surprising connections continues spinning forward. Yesterday's events are already becoming stories, the truth bending with each telling until legend replaces fact. By winter, when people gather in taverns to escape the cold, tales of the counterfeiting ring will have grown to include demons, secret passages, and improbable heroics. Martin the Chandler will be transformed from victim to martyr or villain, depending on who's telling the story. William and Blackwell will become warnings against greed, their executions described in gruesome detail by those who claim to have stood closer to the scaffold than they actually did. And somewhere in a nobleman's estate, James may sometimes think of his night among commoners, the adventure that showed him a different side of his own world before he returned to the path laid out from birth. As for you, you have barrels to make, a family to feed, and perhaps a few more nights at the Prancing Pony in your future, though hopefully with less excitement and an earlier return home. You pat the letter against your chest once more before entering your workshop, where Richard has already begun preparing the oak staves for the day's work. The familiar smells of wood, iron tools, and honest sweat welcome you back to normal life. Master, Richard looks up expectantly. Do you think we'll ever have another adventure like last night? You pick up your adze and test its edge with your thumb. God, I hope not. But part of you, the part that enjoyed the rush of danger and the satisfaction of seeing justice done, silently disagrees. There's something addictive about stepping outside the narrow confines of your assigned place, even briefly. Maybe that's the true appeal of medieval tavern life. Not just the ale and company, but the democratic chaos of it all, the momentary suspension of the rigid rules that otherwise govern every aspect of existence. For a few hours in those smoky, noisy rooms, a cooper can drink alongside a merchant, a nobleman can pass for a commoner, and anyone might stumble into adventure, provided they survive to tell the tale afterward. You smile to yourself and get to work, the rhythmic sounds of barrel making filling the workshop as the morning wears on. Outside, life in the medieval town continues its course, countless stories unfolding in tandem, some ending in tragedy, others in triumph, most somewhere in between. And tonight, in taverns across the town, people will gather again to drink, to laugh, to escape the hardships of their lives for a few precious hours. Some will find trouble, some romance, some simply oblivion at the bottom of a cup. Medieval nights out, unpredictable, dangerous, and absolutely necessary for making the brief, brutal span of existence feel a little more bearable, a little more worth the struggle. You wouldn't have it any other way. 3 weeks later, the London barrels are nearly finished. You and Richard have worked from dawn to dusk each day, your hands raw and calloused, your back aching from the repetitive motions of barrel making. But the results are worth it. 30 perfectly crafted oak barrels, each one sealed and tested for leaks. The workshop smells of fresh wood and beeswax, the autumn sunlight slanting through the open door as you put the finishing touches on the last barrel. Richard is unusually quiet, focused on his work with a maturity that wasn't there before your nighttime adventure. "You've done good work?" you tell him, inspecting his joinery. "These barrels will serve the London wine merchant well." He beams under the rare praise. "Do you think your brother will come himself to collect them?" "More unlikely. He'll send a carter." You run your hand over the smooth curve of a barrel stave, but his letter said the merchant was pleased with the advance samples, might lead to more orders. More orders mean more income, more security in a world where neither comes easily. The 40 shillings from James and the constable have already been put to good use. A new roof for the workshop, better tools, winter stores laid in, and a small reserve hidden in the loose floorboard under your bed. Medieval economics at its most basic. Prepare for hardship before it arrives. Agnes enters the workshop, wiping her hands on her apron. Widow Jenkins says they're bringing out the prisoners. Your stomach tightens. Today is execution day for William, Blackwell, and Giles. The trial was quick, as medieval justice tends to be when the evidence is overwhelming. Guilty verdicts were delivered 2 days ago, and medieval society wastes no time carrying out sentences. "Are you going to watch?" Richard asks, his voice caught between morbid fascination and dread. "No," you reply firmly. "Public executions are standard entertainment, drawing crowds from miles around. People bring their children, pack picnics, make a day of it, but you've had enough of death recently." "I thought not," Agnes says with approval. "I've told the neighbours we're too busy with the London order. A convenient excuse, sparing you the social awkwardness of abstaining from what many consider both a civic duty and a public spectacle." Richard looks relieved. For all his excitement about adventure, the reality of watching men being drawn and quartered is beyond even his curiosity. When they're done, he begins hesitantly, "We'll go to the Prancing Pony," you finish for him, "to celebrate completing the barrels." His face lights up. Despite everything, the allure of tavern life remains strong. The music, the stories, the brief escape from daily burdens. As the day progresses, you can track the execution stages by the distant sounds from the town square, the roar when the prisoners are brought out, the hushed anticipation during the reading of charges, the collective gasp and murmurs during the actual deaths, finally the gradual dispersal of the crowd, voices animated as they dissect every gruesome detail. Medieval death is public, intimate, and thoroughly discussed afterward. By late afternoon, the barrels are complete, arranged in neat rows awaiting transport. You step back, surveying your work with pride. Craftsmanship is one of the few areas where a medieval commoner can feel true accomplishment. "They're beautiful," says a voice from the doorway. You turn, surprised to see Walter from the Boar's Head leaning against the frame. He looks older somehow, the events of recent weeks having left their mark. "Walter," you greet him, "didn't expect to see you here." He shrugs, stepping into the workshop. "Tavern's quiet today. Everyone's at the, He gestures vaguely toward town. "Thought I'd check if you're still planning to collect those free drinks I promised. We were heading to the Pony tonight, actually." You admit? Walter nods, unsurprised. "Mary's ale is better than mine. I'll give her that." He runs a hand over one of your finished barrels. "Nice work. Heard you got the London contract." Word travels fast. "It's a small town." He hesitates. "Had news from Bristol yesterday. Eliza's settled in with her cousin, found work at a respectable inn." Relief washes through you. "Good, that's good. She wrote that we shouldn't worry, said some nobleman arranged everything." Walter gives you a pointed look. "Wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" "Me? Friends with noblemen?" You force a laugh. "I'm just a cooper." "Right." Walter clearly doesn't believe you, but doesn't press further. "Anyway, she seems happy, fresh start and all that." You nod, understanding the unspoken gratitude beneath his gruff manner. "Best thing for her?" "Probably." He straightens up. Well, offer stands if you want those free drinks, though I understand if you'd rather not come back to the Boar's Head, considering. We'll be by, you promise, once the London shipment is gone. Good to support local businesses. He snorts at that, but seems pleased. Bring your wife. My new barmaid makes a decent meat pie. Nothing fancy, but better than my wife's. Don't tell her you said that, you advise. Walter laughs, the first genuine laugh you've heard from him in weeks. Not a complete fool, am I? He turns to go, then pauses. They're saying Blackwell died well, refused the hood, faced the crowd, confessed everything. You hadn't asked, but appreciate the information nonetheless. Medieval executions follow strict protocols, with how one faces death being as important as the dying itself. A good death can partially redeem a misspent life in the public memory. And the others? Walter shakes his head. William wept and begged. Giles cursed everyone until they cut his tongue out for blasphemy. You wince. Even by medieval standards, that's harsh. Anyway, Walter continues, clearly eager to change the subject. Martin's widow used her compensation to buy the chandlery outright. She's running it herself now. Women do what they must, eh? This is unusual, but not unheard of. Widows sometimes continue their husbands' trades, especially when they've been working alongside them for years. Good for her, Agnes says, having entered quietly during the conversation. Better than remarrying in haste. Walter nods agreement. Well, I should get back. The after-execution crowd will be thirsty. Nothing like watching men die to work up a need for ale. He leaves as abruptly as he arrived, his footsteps fading down the street. He seems different, Agnes observes. Near brushes with treason charges will do that, you reply. Richard emerges from the back of the workshop where he'd been tidying up. Are we still going to the pony tonight? You exchange glances with Agnes, who nods slightly. Yes, we've earned it. The prancing pony is moderately busy when you arrive that evening, the post-execution crowd having thinned as people return home for supper. Mary greets you warmly, immediately bringing ale without being asked. On the house, she declares. Heard you helped catch those counterfeiters. News travels in mysterious ways in medieval towns. Despite your attempts at discretion, your role in events seems widely known, though thankfully without the complicating details involving noblemen and stolen rings. Just happen to be in the right place, you deflect. Or wrong place, Agnes adds dryly. Mary laughs. Either way, first round's free. Your boy, too. She nods at Richard, who straightens proudly at being called a boy rather than a child. The tavern feels different tonight, or perhaps you're the one who's different. The familiarity of the low-beamed ceiling, the straw-covered floor, the mingled smells of ale and wood smoke are the same, but your perception has shifted. You notice details you previously overlooked, the careful way Mary calculates change, the strategic positioning of regulars near the fire, the quiet negotiations happening in corners. A tavern isn't just a place to drink, it's the beating heart of medieval social life, a complicated ecosystem with its own rules and rhythms. Cooper, a voice calls from across the room. It's the blacksmith, his massive frame taking up most of a bench. Join us. You've never been particularly friendly with the blacksmith, but apparently your elevated status as counterfeiter catcher has earned you an invitation to his table. Medieval social capital is fluid, constantly recalibrated based on recent events. Go, Agnes encourages. Richard and I will get a table. You make your way over, ale in hand. The blacksmith is sitting with the miller and a man you don't recognise, better dressed than most patrons, with the soft hands of someone unaccustomed to manual labour. This here's the fellow I was telling you about, the blacksmith tells the stranger. Was right in the thick of it with the counterfeiters. Fought that scarred killer himself, from what I heard. The story has grown impressively in the retelling. Next week, you'll probably have single-handedly captured all the criminals while fighting off a dozen armed guards. Impressive, the stranger says, extending a hand. Edward Lowell, King's Assayer from London. You shake his hand, trying not to show your surprise. The King's Assayer is responsible for ensuring the purity of royal coinage, a prestigious position. What brings you to our town? You ask, taking the offered seat. The counterfeiting case, Edward replies, needed to examine the false coins, determine how they were made, if they match other operations we're investigating. Find anything interesting. Edward takes a careful sip of wine, actual wine, not ale, marking him as a man of means. The dies were exceptional work, professional quality. Someone with training made those. Not William or Blackwell, you deduce. Certainly not. Edward studies you with new interest. You seem well informed for a Cooper. You shrug. People talk, especially in taverns. Indeed they do. He leans forward. In fact, I've heard interesting talk about you. A Cooper who identifies secret compartments in barrels, recognizes counterfeit coins, helps capture traitors. Exaggerations, you demur, suddenly uncomfortable with the scrutiny. Perhaps, but capabilities like those are valuable to the Crown. Edward reaches into his jacket and produces a sealed letter. My superior is looking for reliable men in market towns, eyes and ears who understand trade, recognize irregularities. You stare at the letter, understanding dawning. You're offering me work as an informant? Edward winces at the blunt phrasing. As a correspondent with the Royal Mint, paid, of course, and discreet. The blacksmith and miller watch with undisguised curiosity. This kind of opportunity, a connection to royal authority, a source of additional income, potential advancement, is rare for someone of your station. I'm a Cooper, you say slowly. I make barrels. And you'll continue making barrels, Edward assures you. The best cover is an honest trade. We just ask that you report anything unusual, especially regarding currency or valuable goods. You pocket the letter without committing. I'll consider it. Edward nods, satisfied for now. That's all I ask. And remember, discretion is essential. The conversation shifts to more general topics. The price of grain, the coming winter, predictions about taxes. But your mind keeps returning to the letter, heavy in your pocket. Another unexpected consequence of your night out. Eventually, you excuse yourself and return to Agnes and Richard, who've secured a small table near the back. What did he want? Agnes asks immediately, always perceptive. Tell you later, you murmur, aware of listening ears nearby. Richard is watching the door where a small commotion has erupted as newcomers enter. Master, look, you turn to see Brother Timothy, the young novice from St. Catherine's Monastery, making his way through the crowded tavern. His brown robes and tonsured head draw curious glances. Monks aren't common in taverns, though not forbidden from entering. Is he looking for us? Agnes wonders. Your question is answered when Brother Timothy spots your table and heads directly toward you, weaving between patrons with surprising agility for someone supposedly cloistered. Good evening, he greets you with a small bow. Forgive the intrusion. Brother Timothy, you acknowledge. What brings you to the prancing pony? Spiritual thirst or the ordinary kind? He smiles at your jest. Neither, I'm afraid. I bring a message. He glances meaningfully at Richard and Agnes. For your ears alone, if possible. Agnes takes the hint immediately. Richard, help me fetch more ale. Once they're gone, Brother Timothy sits, leaning close. I've come from Lord Pembroke's estate. Your heart sinks. Has something happened to James? Master James is well, Timothy assures you, reading your expression. But there have been complications. What kind of complications? Timothy glances around before continuing. The investigation into the counterfeiting operation has expanded. Edward Lowell and his men are examining connections to other towns, other nobles. You think of your recent conversation with the assayer. He approached me earlier, offered me a position as an informant. Timothy nods. He's recruiting widely. The king fears the counterfeiting network extends further than our local operation. What does this have to do with James or me? Lord Pembroke has received questions about his son's whereabouts during the weeks preceding the arrests. Someone suggested he might have been in town around that time. You keep your face carefully neutral. And was he? Timothy gives you a knowing look. Officially, Master James was on a spiritual retreat at St. Catherine's. I've personally attested to this, as have several brothers. His attendance at daily prayers was exemplary. A convenient fiction provided by the monastery in exchange for what was undoubtedly a generous donation. That's good to hear, you say carefully. Young noblemen need spiritual guidance like anyone else. Indeed, Timothy places a small package on the table. Master James asked me to deliver this with his gratitude for your discretion. You make the package disappear into your shirt without examining it. Medieval taverns have too many curious eyes for such business. Tell him his secret remains safe, you assure Timothy, as does his spiritual devotion. The young monk smiles slightly. I'll convey your message. He rises to leave. Oh, and Cooper, the widow Simmons has decided to apprentice her son to the blacksmith instead. Thought you'd want to know. With that, he slips away through the crowd, leaving you to ponder this final piece of information. The widow Simmons has been trying to place her son in a trade while simultaneously trying to place herself in your bed. The blacksmith apprenticeship solves one of those issues, at least. Agnes and Richard return with fresh ale, having deliberately taken their time. What was that about? Agnes asks. Monastery business, you reply vaguely. I donated a small barrel for their communion wine after everything. She raises an eyebrow but accepts the explanation. As the evening progresses, a musician begins to play, a man with a small harp and a surprisingly good voice. He sings tales of love and loss, heroes and villains, the eternal themes that resonate regardless of century. The tavern grows quieter as people listen, the music creating a momentary bond between strangers. This is medieval entertainment at its purest, simple yet profound, accessible to all regardless of status or wealth. You find yourself relaxing truly for the first time in weeks. The London barrels are finished. The counterfeiting case is resolved. You have coin in your pocket, your family beside you, and ale in your cup. By medieval standards, this is as good as life gets. Later, much later, when the music has ended and the tavern has emptied of all but the most dedicated drinkers, you finally leave for home. The night air is cool and clean after the smoky interior, the stars brilliant above the darkened town. Agnes walks close beside you, Richard, a few paces ahead, still humming one of the musician's tunes. You never told me what was in the package, she says quietly. Haven't looked yet, you admit, waiting until we're home. She nods, understanding. And the letter from the king's assayer? News travels fast, you observe with a smile. Mary's cousin is married to the miller, she explains. I hear things. Of course she does. Medieval women's networks of information are as effective as any royal intelligence service, if less formally acknowledged. It's an offer of employment, you tell her, as an informant. Agnes considers this silently for several steps. Will you take it? What do you think? She squeezes your arm gently. I think we've had enough excitement recently. Barrels are safer than royal intrigues. You nod agreement. My thoughts exactly. When you reach home, Richard bids you good night and heads for his small sleeping space in the loft above the workshop. He's asleep almost instantly, the combination of hard work, ale and music having done its work. Alone in your small house, you finally examine Timothy's package. Inside is a small but heavy pouch and a note in James's now familiar handwriting. For the cooper and his wife, may your tavern nights henceforth be peaceful ones. The pouch contains 10 gold coins, more money than you'd normally see in several years. Combined with your previous windfalls, you're now wealthier than many of your fellow craftsmen. What will we do with it? Agnes asks, eyes wide at the sight of the gold. You consider the question carefully. Save most. Perhaps expand the workshop eventually. You pause. And maybe visit the Gilded Cup once, just to see what wine tastes like when it's served in actual silver cups. Agnes laughs. A cooper and his wife at the Gilded Cup? We'd cause a scandal. Maybe that's not such a bad thing, you suggest. Medieval society could use a little shaking up now and then. She kisses you in response, a rare display of affection outside the privacy of your bed. You're a strange man, Cooper, but I wouldn't have you any other way. Later, lying in your bed with Agnes breathing softly beside you, you reflect on the nature of medieval nightlife. The taverns and ale-houses serve as more than just places to drink. They're where social boundaries blur, where adventures begin, where the rigid structure of medieval society briefly loosens its grip. In the darkness of an alehouse, a cooper can solve crimes, a nobleman can walk among commoners, a tavern girl can change her fate with a bold decision. The possibilities expand with each cup, for better or worse. Outside, the town sleeps. Tomorrow will bring routine again. Barrels to make, bread to bake, trades to ply. The medieval world will resume its familiar patterns, the social order reasserting itself in daylight. But the nights belong to the taverns, where stories are born, fortunes change, and ordinary people briefly taste extraordinary possibilities. Your eyes grow heavy as sleep approaches. Perhaps you'll visit the Boar's Head tomorrow to collect those promised free drinks. Or maybe the Prancing Pony again to hear more music. Or even, with your newfound wealth, venture into the Gilded Cup to see how the other half drinks. Whatever tavern calls to you next, you'll approach it with new appreciation for the complex world hidden within its walls and a firm resolve to come home at a reasonable hour. As you drift towards sleep, the sounds of the medieval night fade, the distant church bells marking the hours, the occasional call of the night watch, the rustle of wind through thatch. Medieval nights out, dangerous, unpredictable, essential parts of a world both utterly foreign and surprisingly familiar. A world where a simple tavern might contain more stories, more humanity, more life in its cramped, smoky confines than all the king's palaces combined. Your breathing deepens as sleep finally claims you, carrying you away from taverns and troubles alike, at least until dawn brings another day in your medieval life.